Okay, I think we just went live. Let me make sure this is popped out here. And also let me verify that we're running. And there we go. Sorry for the crappy video thing down in the corner. The little dots. I'm wearing a gray shirt and I have a blue screen, so it's not working out so hot, but that's okay. So I was going through the so if you go to the Pixelogic YouTube channel and you go to the Pavlovich workshop playlist on video 6, I think is so video 7 is the latest one. The video 6 had a question: can you go more in depth with the hair creation for games from start to finish? Probably not. It's pretty tedious, like I was mentioning in that video. There was one thing I forgot to mention though in regards to hair and UVing, which is if you do fiber mesh. So if we start over this mesh right here, let me make sure we're good. Yes. So if we starting with fiber mesh here from last time, I think we talked a little bit about fiber mesh, but I don't think I went over the fact that what fiber mesh can do is UV hair cards for you. So it's been a while since I've done this, but we do preview hair cards here. By default, probably what you're gonna see is something more akin to this, where it's just like hair like this. If I want the hair to go straight up, I can comb it straight up, or I can just turn her upside down. Have your gravity, if you just touch gravity, it'll go ahead and just kind of push it towards gravity here. And depending on where your camera angle is, it'll force the hairs down in that direction. If we go over here, we can change our max fibers down. If we're just doing hair cards, you probably don't want hundreds of thousands of hair cards, or at least hair strands. So what we're going to do is crank down the max fibers. We're going to go down here to coverage and just crank that all the way up to like 5,000. If you open the width profile here, you can also crank that up to the top left and right. And if you want them to taper, like go from thick to thin, you can go thick to thin if you want to. I'm just going to keep these uniform thickness here. And so now here we have hair cards. So if we like this, or we want to, if we want to change any of these settings, we can. The length profile we can change. Now, if I update any of these settings with gravity turned on all the way up, all the way here, let's see if I go gravity of -1. There we go. So now instead of turning her upside down, I'll just keep gravity at -1 here, and we can crank up the max fibers or crank them down. And then once we have these things, we can use those as hair cards. So I think you can also plug in a texture. So if you want to verify that the texture is going from root to tip, you can just throw any texture in there. Texture is larger than the size specified. Reducing texture size, yeah, that's fine. Is it? No. So now you have the texture plugged in. So we have stars sitting here. And in fact, let's go ahead and go down here to masking, turn off view mask, and then hit BPR. And that'll actually go through here, and you can see that the shadows will actually cast accurate star-shaped shadows onto her head. So if you were to go ahead and say, okay, I want to accept, I guess root to tip. Let's do, we'll do rainbow here. So if you look at this rainbow, it goes from blue on the bottom to pink on the top, and you see it goes from blue to pink. So it is going from root to tip on every single one of these strands, which is good, which is what you want. So if you were to replace this with a hair texture that was from root to tip, hey, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by to Zoom me. If you are doing, hair texturing, which you probably would want to have that UV'd in your 0 to 1 and your positive X, you could have a number of hair strips in that area that have a bunch of hair textures if you want. But basically that's what you're looking for. So this fiber mesh will go ahead and do that for you. And of course, if we do go ahead and hit accept, boy, I'm losing it. Where is it at? I need to wake up. I had coffee today. I don't know what my problem is. At the bottom, let's close all these things here. There it is, accept. So now we've accepted those hair cards. Now they're a separate subtool here. If you want to look at the UVs, there are going to be a lot of overlapping UVs, but you can still go down here to texture map, and we can go to create new from UV map, and that'll go ahead and show you a texture map based on the UVs. And of course they're going to be overlapping, so it's probably going to end up red now that I think about it. Okay, did it. So there's our UVs right there, and they've got 3 segments through here. which is fine. If you wanted to groom these things, you could still go to BG and choose any one of these grooming things, and you can play with it just like you would fiber mesh, because essentially that's what they are. They're just very thick, broad fiber meshes, but now you can use them as hair cards. You can export this as geo, and you're off to go. Hey, what's going on? Artiste. Let me go ahead and hide this window here. So that was kind of a half terrible answer to the question on the YouTube channel, but that's probably as far as I'll go with hair, at least on this channel, just because there's a lot of cool, fun stuff we can do with Pixel Logic or with ZBrush. Hair is not terrible, as you can see. You can do a lot of fiber mesh stuff, and like in the other video, making your own hair cards and then using the insert mesh brushes to, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Brush, I put these under, I think, IMM. Yeah, so you can actually use stuff like this for hair. Uh-oh. Gave me something here. Let's let that quit out. We'll start that one from scratch. Yeah, let me see if I can fix this video too. Filters, color key. A little bit better. Anyway, like we were saying, drag out a cylinder here, make Polymesh 3D, go into my brushes here, IMM, and any one of these things you could conceivably turn into hair. Make it bigger, go ahead and tap off to get rid of that curve, go into your deformation menu and inflate this up, and you can Z-remesh this if you want to, and yeah, all that good stuff. So what else did I have in my list of things to do today? We are going to go back to the sci-fi female, I think, because we got her concepted out, so we can just continue forward with that. Let me go ahead and load her up so she's sitting in the batter's box here. ZBrush female, there she is. Drafts also. Mouth, bag, and teeth we went over. I'll be explaining the theory behind UVs, maps, normal maps, and other stuff, I think, on my channel. I could do a little bit of it here, but it'll just be a little bit more comprehensive to show you guys with some other stuff here. How I organize custom interface hotkeys and when and where to use them. That was another question on my channel. Basically how I have this set up. So if I go ahead and show, let's have something on here to play with here. Okay, so we've got a character here, and if I'm going to be sculpting a character, let's go ahead and duplicate this off, shoot to the top, go into solo mode. So I've got a sculpt going on here, and I go and I start sculpting. Now immediately I'm going to need access. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is see how this thing kind of flip-flops around while I'm sculpting. I don't mind having that on when I'm doing stuff like Z-Modeler or stuff where the faces are a little bit broader or more simplified, I should say. Or just like, I'm looking for planes of the model. If I'm just doing basic sculpting, what I'll do is go up here to Preferences, Edit, turn off Align Cursor to Surface. It doesn't affect the functionality of the brush. It still behaves the exact same way as you would expect, but it kind of gets rid of that flopping. I don't need to see that. So that's the number one thing I would do, or I usually end up doing. The second thing I end up doing is, there's something else. Oh yeah, I go to Matcap Gray. This is just kind of my default material. There's a lot of different materials you can download. If you prefer working in some of these other materials, they're fine. And I would also suggest, I mentioned this earlier, where, switch between these matte caps, but just remember the material's baked in. If you ever want to check your object with lighting, what you can do is put on a basic material, any of them will do, and then you'll have access to real-time lighting feedback here. So we can go up here to the light menu, and then we can kind of move this thing around, and you can check your sculpt based on different lighting scenarios. And you can also turn on other lights here if you'd like, and just get real-time feedback in there. And that'll happen with the basic materials down here. Let's see. Question: if you're able to, could you demo watertight for 3D printing workflow steps for getting clean, sharp, multi-subtool merged solids? Subtools merge into solid for 3D printing without getting weird geometry with the sharp angles. I can give it a shot. I'm certainly no expert, but yeah, we can give that a shot. I think it'll probably be high-res Dynamesh stuff we'd be doing in this case. 3D printing workflows for getting clean, sharp. Yeah, I think I can do that. Okay, so yeah, we have this thing here, lighting, and so next thing I do is I go into standard brush. So even with my standard brush here, let me go ahead and go back into matte cap. So the reason we go into the basic material is if we go to matte cap gray here, the lighting is baked into the object. That doesn't mean the shadows won't be affected. If I throw the light up here to the upper left and hit BPR, it'll cast a shadow in that direction, which it seems to be doing the... Oh wait, I have the wrong one selected, so we'll shoot that one at the other... There we go. There we go. So we will cast a shadow in that direction, but obviously real-time lighting won't affect a matte cap because, again, the lighting is baked in. Now you can, I'm not going to go into too much of a tangent on this, but you can go into your material and you can create a matte cap. Oh boy, it's been a while. Oh, actually, you know what? I think it's on the lighting menu. I have videos on this. I just don't do it very often. Let's see. It's a light cap. So you can make your own matte cap just by adding lights in here and moving them around. So you can create a lighting rig with matte caps and create your own matte cap. And you can actually bring in HDR images and do all that stuff. I'm kind of iffy on the process. I've done it a lot of times a long time ago. So I don't know if I want to embarrass myself here, but that's available to you. I have it on my Intro to ZBrush Part 3. I think we go into that stuff. Okay, so that's the first part, and then I go into my so we start out with our standard brush here, and then under stroke, what I'll usually do is under lazy mouse. The lazy mouse is on by one, up by one. It just kind of evens your stroke out. What I'll tend to do is go up into my stroke menu, crank the lazy radius up, hit L to go out of lazy radius mode, just because I can do stuff like dots, and I don't need it to even my stroke out that much. And if I do, it's usually by more than one. So that will be controlled by my lazy radius here. And I'll also usually end up cranking the intensity up. So usually my default standard intensity would be around mid-30s, unless I'm doing something specific that requires more or less. And so the first thing I will do is start with standard brush. Also clay brush. So my hotkeys here, I can just go through them real quick. It's a clay brush, H polish is Alt H, and because I always have my thumb on the Alt key, all my hotkeys are assigned to Alt something for my brushes. If you want to assign a hotkey to brushes, it's just Control Alt and tap a brush and then give it it'll say, do you want to assign, or do your key combination to assign. It'll assign that, and then you'll want to go to Preferences, Hotkeys, Store, and that'll store your hotkeys. And also, if you're going to do any overall UI changes, go to Preferences, Config, Store Config. I'm trying to think. On my channel, if you go to the Intro to ZBrush Part 2 playlist on my YouTube channel, it goes over all the hotkey stuff. And in fact, if you go to my Gumroad, there's Intro to ZBrush files, and you can actually get my custom menu here and all my hotkey menus. I mean, do your own. This takes you a couple minutes. But you can watch how to do it for free, and you can make your own for free, or you can download mine for free. It's all up to you. Another thing I'll do is I'll hold down Shift, and I'll just choose Smooth Stronger. I tend to use Smooth Stronger. It just gives me a little bit more leeway. For higher, I would say if you're using a base mesh, work at a level that's comfortable to smooth, and don't go any higher than that unless you want to Z-remesh it and project and have subdivision levels. The reason I like Smooth Stronger is I can hold down Shift, and then if I want to smooth less strong, I can crank that down and smooth less strong. But if I leave this at just the regular old smooth brush, I can have it cranked up to 100. And if it isn't smooth enough, then I'm kind of stuck. So Smooth Stronger kind of gives me a little bit more leeway. But again, clay brush, standard brush, trim, dynamic, H polish, Damien standard, and pinch brush is on here. Inflate is on here as one of my hotkeys, and of course Z modeler. Brushes I use all the time, and of course my custom menu here that has my custom insert shape. So my custom menu is Alt-E, and then Alt-Q is my Z modeler. These down here, I'll usually throw in like Snake Hook. I don't use that often, although some people do prefer Snake Hook to the actual move brush. So you can kind of use that to your advantage here if you want to because Snake Hook will kind of give you a little bit more leeway as far as being able to move stuff around. But I don't use it that often, so I'll just throw it down here. And Are you able to hotkey subpalettes, subtool, deformation, display properties, merge, split, etc.? Let's see. Insect eye, no Dynamesh, thanks. Yeah, we can. I'll go back through these questions too. I'll go back up to 3D printing. We'll go through these. But since I'm talking about hotkeys, able to hotkey subpalettes, you can. That's a good question. So like, I mean, we can just give it a shot. Let's see. So subtool menu here. Also, another thing that came up is this little divider here. You can actually assign a hotkey to this, but it doesn't actually do anything. So that's interesting. Sub palettes, let's try it. Control Alt, and we'll do Alt P. So now if I do Alt P, what does it do? Nothing. I'm not sure if it knows what to do, like if it wants you to like open or collapse the subtool palette. What I usually end up doing is you can just recreate the subtool palette in a custom menu. That's what I basically did with this basic mesh menu here. So this base mesh here, I have 3 subpalettes in it that are all just custom. If I have a Z-sphere selected here, you'll see that it starts populating my Z-sphere area. If I have geometry selected, these are all the things I have for modified topology and then poly modeling, just basic poly modeling here. So you could just recreate the subtool menu just by going into the custom UI and doing that, and then you'll have a full menu that you can then assign to a hotkey, kind of like a marking menu in Maya, and then have that available to you. Yeah, so that's the only way I can think of. There might be a fancier way, but that's probably the most straightforward way I can think of. So we'll do this. So anyway, the hotkey stuff that I have set up is usually if I use it all the time, and I'm clay brush, standard brush, move brush, I use all the time. I also forgot I have move acu put into one for hard edge sculpting. I like to have move acu because it pulls out to corners. So if I say wanted to make her head or her face a box here, I could go through here with my H polish brush, and then I could use move acu to kind of pull these out to a corner here, like so. If I was to try to do that with the move brush, let's undo that. And I go over this in a number of other videos here. If I use the move brush, see how it's kind of floppy. You know, I can go small, but then it pulls out the small. I can go big, but it pulls out the soft corners. If I use move acu, it pulls out to sharp corners. There we go, like a box. And that is just under, go to the move menu here. Let's throw a brush menu over here. And of course that's under a curve. Just turn acu curve on, and that'll pull out to a corner, or leave it off and that'll be your move brush. I just saved out a separate move brush, put it in my startup menu, and now I have acu curve always available to me to do that. But if I use hotkeys, or if I use a brush all the time, it goes in a hotkey. If I use a brush sometimes, it goes down here. If I use a brush very occasionally, I'll just have it stored in my lightbox menu here. So if I go into lightbox, occasionally I'll go in here to do, here's some really old brushes here. Some hell brushes. I don't remember what these are for. Anything interesting in here? Meat explosion, that sounds interesting. Oh, okay. So this is just if you wanted to do like exploded meat chunks or something, you could do that. A little Hellraiser-ish. Yeah, so there's that, and then custom, I kind of went over it a little bit, but the custom base mesh brush, or the menu that I did, any menu up here you can assign to a hotkey. So I have this one assigned to Alt A. And then when I hit Alt A, it's like a little marking menu. I have submenus in here, which I usually just keep this whole thing open. And then no matter where I am, I always have access to that. You can hit S to go to brush size. You can hit spacebar, or you can hold down spacebar. It'll give you a lot of different options in here. So, cool. Topology brush question. Yeah. Okay. Let me back up, and we'll go back to the 3D printing question, and I'll work my way down here. So if we have, let's take her. Let's say we want to 3D print her out. So I'm going to isolate just her. And this is for 3D printing and demo watertight for 3D printing workflow steps for getting clean, sharp, multiple subtool merge solids. So, oh man, I should have watched some videos on this. I know Joseph Drust does this a lot. Just off the top of my head, let's try a few things here. So if I do a slice curve, and let's say I want to slice her right at her waist here, Well, first let's make sure she's, I'll hit Control W, make sure she's also one polygroup just to make this a little simpler here. So if I go through here and I just slice her in half here, if I have her at a Dynamesh resolution that's high enough, let's see if this is high enough here. We'll do a little test. That's fine. So we'll say 1072 is what we're looking at here. If I turn off blur, turn off project, I can have, I can do it down here too. So geometry, Dynamesh here. Here's all your Dynamesh options. I usually turn off blur, turn off project, and I'll Dynamesh this thing, but I'm going to go ahead and keep groups on in this case here, and I'll turn Dynamesh on. What that's going to do is keep these two polygroups separate. So now I have this piece here. I can Control-Shift-click it to isolate it, and then Control-Shift-A to do my visibility grow all. And now what I can do is just do a split hidden. So now I have two separate subtools here. Now if I want to do like key registration, it would just be a matter of doing brush BI, brush insert cube, or I have my own custom menu. I can just drop a cube in here, and we'll do maybe a half and half cube. So I'll bury that halfway, and I'll go ahead and just do a quick split mask points. So now I've got an upper body, a cube, a lower body, and a cube. I'm going to duplicate that cube off. This cube here, I'm going to merge down, which is going to be under the merge menu here. So just merge down, and now this has a cube sticking out, and I'm going to merge these down, but I'm going to do the subtractive mesh here. So I'll do Control W just to make sure it's all one polygroup. We're going to merge this down onto that cube, but it's going to be subtractive here. So when I go there and then Dynamesh, it'll have a little box in there. So now this box here will fit right into that box there. Now, of course, there's tolerances built in, I assume. I don't know how accurate your 3D model is. So that's one way to do it. So that's not really merge subtools. I guess if we had a bunch of subtools, I'm trying to think if I have. Oh yeah, I do. Hold on. Give me a second. Let me load up a intro. Where are we at? Desktop, sorry. Let me see if I have a quick reptile armor. Let's do that one. So if you needed to merge a bunch of things together for a 3D print, first I would say, get everything on the screen that you want to merge together. I'm going to simplify this a bit just to make sure, just to kind of, you know what, it's not that heavy. Let's just go ahead and do it. I'll do subtool. We'll do merge visible here. Now that we have all those merged, now we have them all merged into one. Now, of course, I'm going to have to split off, and we kind of went over this in another video too, where or maybe it was on my channel. We split off all the hoses and then merged them back together. But here is where you would you would Dynamesh your stuff together, I'm assuming, for 3D printing. And that would be watertight. Now, if you wanted to make sure, Dynamesh will make this, it should make it watertight, but you're still going to have little areas in here that could be pretty nasty. So one thing you could do is have this available to you and then go to remesh, and not Z-remesh, but remesh, and you can give this a shot. So we'll do a resolution of like 256, turn off polygroup, turn polish down to like 2, and then just hit remesh all. This is not symmetrical across the X. I'm going to turn that off. And that'll give you an envelope around your object here. So in lieu of Dynameshing something where you could have some pockets in there that aren't great, you can do a remesh, which again will just give you an envelope, and then you can select that remesh here. And then with that remesh selected, you can go to your subtool menu. You can do project all. Then that'll start projecting the detail back. It should be flipped correctly. We'll see. Make sure this goes okay. Now, this is projecting to a fairly heavy polygon mesh, so I can probably speed this up a little bit if I, it's not too bad. So if I go into solo mode here, you're going to see that's the project all. Now I would want to continue to hit Control D and then project all, Control D, project all. You're going to see there's a little bit of, possibly a little bit of error stuff going on we might have to clean up, so let's give it a shot. Before I do that, let me just try It might not like this very much, but I'm going to try and just Dynamesh this and see what I get. Because there's a lot of subtools on here that I'm closing holes on. We'll see how it goes. Give me a second to get down to the questions toward the bottom here. Let's see if I can get this to work. And the only reason I'm doing this is another way that you could make a watertight mesh, but like I said, there might be areas, little crevices in there that aren't great. Yeah, it's going to do something weird. Well, the heck with that. We'll just keep going with our remesh here. So we'll hit Control D to subdivide our remesh, and then we'll just hit Project All again. And I'm just going to do one more, but then I'll show you how to kind of clean this up if it needs it. Looks like it's doing a pretty good job, though. Once this is done projecting, and we're up to 500,000 now. This way, it's just taking that envelope of mesh and just projecting it to the nearest vert, so it won't capture like Dynamesh will. If you have a very deep crevice, it'll capture all of that depending on your resolution. You could also try, in lieu of remeshing, you could try duplicating off your mesh, Dynameshing at a low resolution, so it'll capture all of your object as one mesh, but it'll be so low res that any tight corners or crevices will be automatically blocked off. And then you can just do this process, which is basically subdivide and project. Now these little errored areas here, let me go into solo mode here, and let me just go to, yeah, okay. So one thing you can do is you can go to B, Z, P, Z project, go to Z project brush, turn off RGB, and then you can use this you can kind of just project down to a surface and then hold down Alt and project up to a surface. You can kind of go through here. It is camera based, so number one, don't have X turned on, just do one side at a time, and then you can just kind of project all these errors out. Now this is a step you wouldn't have to do if you just Dynamesh the original mesh at a low resolution. That's another option. So a watertight mesh, and then you can go ahead and slice and dice however you want this thing. Let's try one more time. I'm going to just try, I'm going to duplicate this off. I think I have something weird going on here. Let me see if this has double turn. It's all right. Let me just try this real quick. We'll do 128. Straight driving and merge subtools get rough line. Hey, red-haired she-devil. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so this did it. So now I Dynameshed it at such a low resolution, you can see it already capped some of those inside faces here. So now you could use this as your watertight mesh. If you wanted to make it even more watertight, maybe fill some of this in, you would just go to brush, let's see, BI, insert sphere, and just kind of start plugging this stuff up. And you could use your clay brush or whatever just to kind of push that in. Use your move brush, and you can go ahead and just like spackling holes here, and then just re-Dynamesh this together. But yeah, so there's another version of the watertight mesh here, and then I would just have this original here, and I would subdivide up or raise my resolution slowly. You could just take your Dynamesh here, and instead of staying at a resolution 128, you can bump it up, bump it up, bump it up. But you would probably want to do the lower res first, just to make sure any tight areas are closed, so you don't have to worry about that, I suppose. But yeah, that's probably the best I got. Let's see what else we got. Insect eye, no Dynamesh. Oh, I assume you're talking like if you wanted to do like a sphere, and we'll go ahead and trying to think of the best way. Actually, you know what? Let's not use a sphere. Let's use, well, we can use a sphere. Start with a sphere, make polymesh 3D. Go into initialize, hit Q cube, and then hit Control D if you want. Oops, let's do a Q cube of 1 res here. There we go. And then subdivide this down into a sphere. Let's go ahead and size this up just a bit first. So now we have a sphere here, and let's say we want to replace all of these. Although you might not even need to replace all of them, but if you wanted to make them more faceted, let's see, geometry. You know, this could look like a fly's eye, I suppose. Like this. And then if you wanted to replace those. I'm trying to think. Let me see. Hold on. What does a fly eyeball look like? Okay, so those are filled with like tiny little hexes there. Or they're kind of just bubbly too. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and just do a quick inset all polygons here. You could inset all of them, and then you could go in here to QMesh polygroup all. Let's see how that looks. And then what else would you want to do to kind of maintain those shapes here? Probably want to inflate them. So let's do that again. Let's try inset just a little, and then we'll do QMesh. And that kind of gives us our bubble. And then let's see if we can do like a scale all, polygroup all, mesh center. Turn on LSIM. No. Inflate. Polygroup all. Face normal. You know what? I can just isolate these. Control Shift S. And then we can just do an inflate. Or a deflate, I guess is what I'm looking for. Let me think. I want those to go out, but then I want to... Oh, you know what? Okay, so we have these here. Let's just do, we can do a QMesh polygroup all. I'm going to take these borders here, and I'm just going to hold down Shift and push those together. And then we'll do dynamic subdiv. Okay, I wonder if, let's try this. ZModeler, let's undo back. Let's do insert nanomesh, polygroup all, hit M, sphere 3D, and then let's go down here to our nanomesh properties. Let's do fit, let's do fill to 1, and then we'll change our width is fine, length is fine. We'll change our height to kind of just bubble that down. And then we can change our offset, Z offset. We can kind of just plug that back down into the mesh here. And then now that those are separate meshes, yeah, I'd probably want to change all of these into a hex pattern first, which you could do with micro mesh. Let me think on that one. That's an interesting one. I've never made a ZModeler bug eyeball. That gets a little fancier than I'm used to. I'll get back to you on that one. Let's see. Oh, topology brush. Let's try that. So let's go back to our lady here. Sometimes works right, sometimes not. All doesn't pinpoints. Can you make straight lines with it or clear curves? You can clear curves. You can go BTO, and then here's your topology brush here. I tend to keep my topology brush in the 20s just to kind of make the curves a little simpler. If you make your brush size really small, you'll get really, really detailed curves, and then sometimes it might have a problem connecting stuff. This gives me less curves to worry about here. So as you have curves on here, it'll go ahead and make them. If you want to get rid of curves, just hold on Alt, and you can just drag over any curves you don't want. If you hold down Alt and just drag out here, it'll delete all of those little strings off of here. If you want to delete your curves altogether, you can go up here to Stroke, Curve, and you can do, under Curve Functions, you can hit Delete. So anything curve related, you go to Brush, Curve, Strap, and you make a curve strap here. Anything that actually has a curve on it, it's the same kind of thing. Now with a curved brush, you can just tap off and that'll delete the curve, but you can also go up here to Stroke and just hit Delete. But as far as the topology brush freaking out, I'm trying to think. The only time I've had it kind of be a little bit weird on me is if I'm going down the middle here. You can drag a straight line. If I'm going to turn off X symmetry here, I can wrap a line around her head. If I start dragging off and hold down Shift, that'll wrap a curved line around her head. And that's the same thing as with a brush curve here. It will double your lines if you go across the x-axis here. So I think that's why I turned off x, so at least I think that's the case. Let's try that. No, that worked okay. Yeah, oh yeah, it did. So there's that to worry about. So you can hit X. I mean, obviously, what would be easier is just do a slice curve here, and then just isolate this, and then just go over here to stroke, frame that border, and now you have a perfectly straight line here. Straight curves. You can do a straight curve. I wonder, now that you mention it, BTO. Let's go to our curve menu here. You can do a straight curve if you turn on as line. So if you turn that on, oh, yeah, there you go. I never thought to use that, but turn on as line with your stroke, and that'll actually make a straight line for you. And now it's going to want to snap to the underlying surface, but I mean, that's kind of the nature of it. I wonder if you turn off snap. Okay, if you turn off snap, it won't, but of course, if you're using the topology brush, you probably want that on. But that's an option to you underneath the curve menu. So you can do straight line. You can just use straight lines here with as line. Doesn't seem to be connecting, so I wonder if that's one of the shortcomings, is you can use as line, but unless you're drawing it across here, it's not going to connect them up. So if I turn that off, there you go. Now it's making those points. So you can use as line for parallel lines, but not for perpendicular lines, it looks like. And like I was saying, the only weird stuff I've run into that I can remember is trying to do a line down the middle here, and then doing lines off the side. Oh wait, with X symmetry on. So if you want to do X symmetry with your topology brush, number one, I can't draw a straight line to save my life, so that's part of the problem. And then if I go here, and then I just start dragging these things down. Sometimes it gets a little weird with this line here. I have to drag out another line, and then it'll fix it. However, if I clean this up, and then I tap to make thickness, it'll sometimes like forget that extra point, so I have to just add that manually, and then it works. That's the only thing I can think of. But as far as like things connecting and shooting on there, most of the curve control, and all the curve control, is over here in your stroke menu, curve functions, and curve modifier. So that's all I've been playing with. Framing the border, turning on as line, turning on snap, turning off snap, that kind of thing. It looks like bend is locked on there. Interesting. But I've never gone in there with topology brush, but maybe mess around in there and see. Yeah, so yeah, you can clear lines, you can make straight lines. Yes, move parts, good question. So if we go to a thing with lots of things, let me see, let me get you a better example here. I'm going to shoot this to the top, hold down shift. I'm just shooting all these pieces to the top here. And then I'm just going to go in here and show visible all these pieces here. And then I'm just going to do a quick merge visible. Now, so if we go into the, oh yeah, there we go. So if I go, make sure Dynamesh, okay. If I go to my move brush here, and we go into the brush settings here, and actually, if you hit B to go in the brush menu, you're going to see there's move elastic, move topological, move curve. A lot of move brushes in here. In fact, if you go up here to your comma key, your light box, and go into B, C, move. There's a lot more move options in here. Move thin. Move thin's pretty cool, actually. But basically, for move parts, all it's doing, I believe, is if we go over here to auto masking. So just the basics here. If we're in the move brush, we just move whatever's within the brush radius here. If we go into turn on topological, it's only going to move things that are within the brush radius, and also vert welded. So this thing is completely separate from that thing, so it'll go ahead and move it. If you had something, we do this a lot, if you have a mouth bag that goes in, you can move the upper lip independently of the lower lip because it's looking at the topology before it moves. I usually change this range down to about 1.5 if I'm going to use that functionality. So I would imagine that move parts, and let's make sure I'm not lying to you here. Let's go, just grab it, brush, move parts. So we've got move parts, and if we look at here, topological is on and range is at 100. So with that selected, it looks like no matter how small I make this brush. I wonder, let's see, Alt W, and then brush, move parts. So this just makes sure that, I mean, you can make a brush really big and then you can just move different separate parts around like this, I think is what it's doing. It's been a while since I used it. I usually just, because I don't use move parts or move any of those specialty things that much, I'll usually just go in here and do auto masking for my move brush. Incidentally, if for some reason if your brush isn't getting big enough, you can hold down shift and turn off dynamic, and that'll give you a little bit more leeway. You can also go into your preferences, draw, there it is, and you can crank up your max brush size, so that'll make it even bigger. And you can also in there, I think there was an option for dynamic brush scale. You can also crank this thing up. And again, if you just hover over something, it'll give you the name. And if you hold down control, it'll give you more information on any of these for the help docs. So I believe it's just topological with the range change to 100, if that makes any sense. And it's not necessarily your technique that's bad, Grizzly Bear, with the topology brush. It might just be, I honestly have a hard time sometimes with the topology brush because, number one, like I said, I can't draw a straight line to save my life, so it's probably user error. But I've seen people retopologize faces with it, so blows me away. I can't do that. Zoom the view without using right-click nav or the Alt-release mount thing. Zooming in and out so easily, I can't seem to do it without using the icon. That would definitely be one thing I would get good at, is because, I can't imagine trying to use ZBrush and also stay. Let me go turn this off real quick. Yeah, if I'm moving around here and I'm just kind of going around here and we're going to be, sculpting all these cool things. We're going to go in here, we're going to hit solo, and we're going to sculpt on these things, and we're going to jump over here, and we're going to sculpt on these things, and I want to go over here and then shoot this at the top, and let's go grab this thing here. We're going to alt click it, shoot at the top, and we're going to work on these two things here. So that kind of speed is what makes ZBrush usable for me. If it was any slower than that, I'd lose my mind. I might as well use any number of slow programs. So definitely navigation's a big part of ZBrush. And this is kind of starting to slow down. Let me grab this one here. There we go. So, so I guess you can use right-click navigation is a favorite. And with right-click navigation, I have it on my mouse or my tablet pin here. You can right-click, and no matter where you right-click your mouse, it'll rotate around that point, which is nice, and also zoom. And it's basically, I'm assuming I don't do right-click navigation all that often unless I'm in a trouble spot where I'm really zoomed in and I'm doing topology and I can't use my safe action. I'll use my right-click navigation to kind of get out of there. But basically, it's I use the Alt-release mouse thing. I know a lot of people use right-click navigation. I want to say there was another technique, but it's eluding me right now, and I could be having a fever dream. I haven't spent a lot of time in ZBrush for a bit, so at least not. I was doing some other stuff in some other programs, so I kind of forget. But I think that's the only thing I can think of is I use just the, and I always have my thumb on the Alt key, so again, Alt is where all my hotkeys are assigned, so I'm just kind of used to that. And then, right-click navigation. I'm trying to think if there's another way to zoom in. And really, it's just second nature. And then when I go into another program like Painter, which I use a tablet thing for, that's got a little bit more right-click, so it's just kind of getting used to that. I can't think of an easier way to kind of zoom in and out. I am being more. It's okay. Fix symmetry. So you can, a Z-sphere on one side. That's a good one. Let's try that. So Z-spheres can sometimes be a little bit finicky. They're kind of their own creature within ZBrush. It's not polygons, which I'm more comfortable with. It's Z-sphere, so it's something a little bit different. So now Z-sphere and Z-sphere topology. Those are two different things. I've never lost symmetry with Z-spheres. If you lose symmetry with polygons, I can show you that. So if we have a polygon thing here, I can go into adaptive skin. make adaptive skin here. And then it's like, okay, I made a change here. And oh, I want to keep my geometry, but I want to have this change on this side. You can mask this side because you want to keep it. And then you can go down here to your deformation menu. Then you can just do a smart resim across the x-axis. And then you can hit X, and then you're back to started. So that's smart resim. That way you don't have to do anything weird to your geometry. Alternatively, if you don't care about your geometry, say this is just a Dynamesh here, like so. And you're just, going in here and sculpting, and you're like, oh, I forgot to turn on my X key. All you got to do is just do a quick mirror and weld. Or if you want this side, you can do a mirror and weld. For you guys, it'll be mirror across the x-axis deformations, and then mirror and weld is under your geometry modify topology menu. And that's why I have my custom menu. They're right next to each other. Trying to think. Yeah, for if it was topology, so let's say, just real quick, we'll just do this real quick. We've gone over this in another video, I think, when we did the base mesh cleanup. But basically, we take this, we duplicate it off, and let's say we want to retopologize this thing. So I'm going to go over to Z-remesher, adaptive size down to 0, and we'll keep our active points. Let's do target polygon count of 5, adaptive size down to 0, just to keep the squares nice and square. And then we'll just Z-remesh this thing, and I'm just going to do half a couple times, just get really simple geometry in here. And then now that we've got simple geometry in here, we can just hit clone, and then we can go to insert a z-sphere, select the z-sphere, hit X, go ahead and scale that down with E, just kind of bury it inside the mesh here, go into transparency mode so you can see it. And then we'll go down here to topology, under edit topology, we'll select topology, and we'll grab that skin z-sphere, and then we'll go into edit topology mode, and of course we can turn off our Z-remesh, or just delete it altogether. We don't need that anymore. And now we have, go to matcap pearl, half gray, and now we have our z-sphere topology. Now, if I lost symmetry, like say I hit X on my z-sphere retopology and it's just all over the place, and I'm like, oh, I like this side, but I don't like this side, that would probably be just a case where I'd go, okay, hit A to make an adaptive skin, go down here to adaptive skin, turn off preview. Yeah, because I don't think smart resim or anything's going to work on this. It's not geometry, it's z-sphere. So what I would do is just take this density down to 1 on my adaptive skin preview here, hit make adaptive skin. And then on that adaptive skin here, I would go, you know what, I like this side. I'll just do a quick mirror and weld, clean it up all nice, go back to my z-sphere here, go to topology, go out of adaptive skin preview, delete topology, go out of edit topology, select topology, grab your nice new mesh here, and now you're back where you started. If I lost symmetry in my topology. Questions about the problem of stray geometry when merge subtools get a rough line at the merge line. Let me see. So if I have a cylinder here, matcap gray, and then let's go ahead and just do our crease tolerance down, hit Control D a couple times, and we'll go ahead and turn off project, turn off blur, Dynamesh this. Okay, so we have a cylinder here, and I go and I make a cube here. So I've got two things here. Merge subtools get a rough line at the merge line. So if I merge these, okay, so let's say these aren't merged. Let's say split mask points, and now they're two separate subtools here. We can just alt click between them, and now I can merge them down. And so if you Dynamesh these things, you might get a rough line like that. That's kind of resolution dependent. If I crank my resolution up, I should get a cleaner line between the two, like so. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to see what the example you're talking about in order to answer that one, if I can. I might have I don't work for Pixelogic. I just use it a lot, so they'd probably have a better answer to that than I do. Yeah, straight geometry sometimes will happen when you've got little pieces here. If you ever want to make sure you only have the geometry you want, or there's like little pieces floating, I would do Control down, Control Shift, grab a little section of your mesh, and then do Control Shift A, and that'll make sure you only have grow visible only the things that are vert welded, and then any floaters you have will be hidden, and then you can just do Geometry Modify Topology Delete Hidden. It'll get rid of any stray crap you have going on. Is ZBrush made for texturing or modeling? Both. I've textured, usually if I'm using ZBrush for texturing, it's for just doing poly paints that I'll take into like Keyshot and stuff. So for example, this dude right here, let me turn everything on. If you go to my Intro to ZBrush Part 3 and my Reptile Creature series, we go through the entire process of like texturing all of this stuff here. So you can see this guy's poly painted here. So if I go back to my Skin Shader 4, and we threw this guy into Keyshot. Let me see if I can just color the material here. Does that show up? S. I guess it is Skin Shader 4. So yeah, so this guy's all poly painted up, and then I took this in the Keyshot and rendered him, and then we did the cleanup pass, and that's where we got the final image for that series. I've also textured high resolution heads for video games. So basically what we'll have is we'll have reference shots of all of the actors with like polarized lenses, so there's no spec map into the color, and it's like really flat lighting. So basically I can go in here to texture, import, and oh boy, let me see if I have something to import really quick. Let me think. Okay, yeah, give me a second. Reference library. Oh, you know what? It's on my other hard drive. All right, let me just pick something stupid. Oh boy, let me just grab something off my desktop here. Kindle walkthrough I made. So we're going to learn how to use the Kindle real quick. And also, when it does a file save, it's saving everything over here as a Z project. So that's why it's taking a little bit. I'll clean this out in just a second. But we can go to texture import, and then we can do these instructional things I made for my mother-in-law. How to use the Kindle here. So we can take these Kindle. Now, say this was a face of somebody. We can turn that opacity down, and then I can go into RGB mode. And now I can just rotate my head to match the reference image here, and I'm probably going to have perspective turned on. And you can also play with the draw angle of view. This is probably going to be turned down depending on the camera lens that they use. You can kind of play with this value to kind of match it up even better. And then once it's all matched up, you can go RGB and just paint that face right through here, and then hit Shift Z. Now, anywhere where it was solid black is going to be an alpha, which usually in the photos you're not going to have. But in this case I do. So I'm going to take this intensity and I'm just going to crank it so I get rid of some of that there. And now we can paint Kindle instructions onto a head here. And if that was a portrait, I would paint this view, turn it this way, import that image, paint this view, turn it this way, paint that image, and just paint all the way around and get my high resolution face on there. And then once the face is painted on there, I could go down here, and as long as I have UVs, which I guess we'll find out if I do or not. If not, I can do them real quick. We can go over here to poly paint. I'm sorry, texture map. The UV map's 24/8, that's fine. We'll do create, new from poly paint. I guess I don't have a UV map, but that's okay, because check this out. We'll do a UV map real quick. I'm going to take this subtool geometry. We'll go down to subdivision level 1 here. I'm going to turn off the poly paint temporarily. I'm going to go over here to Z plugin, UV master. There's a lot of different ways I could do this. It is symmetrical, so I'll keep that on. Does he have poly groups? No. It would be nice to do in here, but that's okay. It does a good job, so we'll just go ahead and hit work on clone, and then unwrap, and then flatten. And there's my UVs right there. We'll go unflatten. We're going to copy these UVs. We're going to go back to my original mesh here, and we'll go ahead and paste those UVs. And now this thing has UVs, so now I can crank this all the way back up, and we can turn our poly paint. Oh, you know what? When I pasted the UVs, I lost my poly paint. All right, let me undo that. So let's see, poly paint, and then we'll paste UVs here. And now, yeah, make sure your poly paint is on. And now this thing has UVs, so now I can go down here to texture map, new from polypaint, and now I've got my texture, my polypaint applied to a texture map here. I can clone this off and then go to texture, make sure it's selected, export, and you're good to go. Alternatively, you could also go to Z plugin. What am I looking for here? Multi-map exporter. So here's all your export options. You can export not just your texture from polypaint, but also ambient occlusion, normal maps, displacement, all that good stuff. So yes, to answer your question, made for texturing and modeling, depending on what you want to do. So you can do both. I usually use it for modeling more, but depending on your job, you might use it for texturing more. Yes, scale by polygon. I'll try that next time for the bug eyeball. I'm still looking at the bug eyeball, and I'm thinking like nano mesh or micro mesh replacement with a hex pattern would probably work. As far as getting like the little bubbles, I guess I would use nano mesh and then I would scale it up. Do we still have that? Now that I let my brain kind of relax from that thing. You know what? It crashed, I think, when I was doing the hair. No big deal. I'll next week I'll figure something cool out for that. Maybe, if I remember. What's on the menu today? I mean, we can go back to the sci-fi lady. That's what I have. Otherwise, I'm pretty open. Okay, yeah, let me try that. I don't think I've ever actually zoomed like that. So if we use plus and minus. Wow, I have never used plus and minus in my life. But yeah, use plus and minus on the keyboard. Cool, good to know. Thank you, Doug E. How do I pose my characters? I usually just do a quick, if it's a simple thing, like, okay, let's just do this. Let's go grab, we'll start simple. So I'm going to grab my Nick Z mesh here. This is not mine, this is Nick Zuccarello's, but we'll borrow it tonight. So if I grab him here, I don't need all this other stuff, so I'm just going to hit delete there. And I'm also going to go down here. He's got layers in here that are totally cool. You can do arm up and not mouth open, all that good stuff. If you don't need those, I'm just going to hit bake all. Now I've got our mesh here. So if I want to just do a simple transpose, it would normally be I can hit, like if I want to rotate something, I'll hold down control and just drag on the mesh, and that'll go ahead and mask for me. And then I can either like anchor here and then rotate around, or I can also like drag this out like it's a bone and then grab these outer circles and just kind of move these in. So that's the first part you already have, is like, yeah, you can transpose it. And you can also, you can rig stuff, and you can also, oh man, it doesn't get complicated, it just gets into a bunch of steps here. I probably won't go into like super duper detail, number one, because I don't probably remember all the steps, if I'm being honest here, but we'll give it a shot. So another thing we can do is we can go to append to Z-sphere, and then we'll hit X here, and just really quickly we will do a rudimentary and I mean, to really answer your question, I just hand it off to the rigging and animation department and tell them, make me something cool, and then they will make me something cool. But in ZBrush, it's a different story. So if we just do kind of a rudimentary kind of rig, I'll just do the upper body for now, or just this through here. You can use Z-spheres to pose models too. So let's see if I remember how to do this here. I think I'll clone that off here, and then under Z-sphere topology. No. Boy, it's been a long time. It is rigging, select mesh. Let's see, did that do it? Select mesh. There we go. So now we can hit bind mesh, I think, and now if we rotate, yeah. Now obviously you're going to want to shoot Z-spheres up here so his head doesn't collapse when you rotate his arms, although it's kind of cool looking. But yeah, you can use Z-spheres to kind of pose your mesh as well. There's not, in order to do the equivalent of like painting weights, you can add more Z-spheres as control spheres. because it's, you know, I don't know of any way in here you can actually go in and control a weight painting, which would be cool. But that's one way to do it. If you wanted to pose multiple things, you could go into transpose master, which is over here, and that's basically, let me clear ZBrush out. It's getting a little heavy. Just initialize ZBrush here. And we will go into everybody's favorite to do transpose master demo soldier. Lightweight and a lot of stuff. So if we like this thing, basically you're going to want to make sure everything ideally has a low subdivision level, because what's going to happen is you're going to go into T-pose mesh. It's going to go and grab all your lowest subdivision levels and give you a T-pose mesh. So when you're done posing this thing, say we want to bend his arms here, we'll go across the x-axis. Now instead of holding down control and dragging in this case, what I'm going to end up doing is just going here to my mask lasso, and we'll just mask this, invert that, and then we can find our anchor point here, or we can drag it in like bones. We can rotate and move how we want, and you're going to notice the gloves and everything went fine. So in this case, in this example, it's really just a matter of going through here and masking, inverting your mask, and you can go through here one at a time for your fingers, which you probably want to do. But we'll do 2 here. Bend some fingers here, and if you ever need to, and again, you can also use you know, Control Shift to kind of isolate if you want to mask these out, and then you can drag through here. So if you're having problems, it's just like having a mesh with multiple objects that you can hold down Control Shift and isolate, or you know, grab a little piece of it and then do Control Shift A to grab all of it if you want to. Using all those tricks, let's go ahead and give him a cool whee. So now that we have that, once we're done with this, we can go to T-pose, back to my subtools, and it'll go through and just move all of my subtools. So now here's my high-res guy, transpose like that. You can also, you're going to see over here, I'm not going to go into this because, again, it's been a while. It's been a long time since I've done this stuff, but you can do a Z-sphere rig. You can do, you can preserve existing poly groups. You can create a new layer per subtool, so that way when it moves your subtool, you'll be able to go in here to layers and turn those off and on, kind of like when Nick Z's mesh was closing his mouth and doing his arm movements. You can use a Z-sphere rig. You can store your transpose rig, and you can paste the transpose rig, which I'm assuming is your Z-sphere rig. So yeah, all those things I would do in ZBrush. If I'm doing like a statue or something, yeah, I'm going to model it like into my A-frame, my A-pose first, just to, in a cross symmetry, just to save me time, and then at the very end, I mean, I probably would use transpose master, or in a pinch, maybe merge visible, bulk move, and then start splitting stuff off again, and then refining. Because yeah, after you bend stuff in here too, you're going to want to go back in here and, like, you know, pop the ulna out and make any changes you need to in here. They kind of make sense for when things move. Fix this side up, or hit X2. Loose wire holes and tearings in clothing. Let's see if I have a cloth. Oh, you know what? One thing I forgot to mention. On my channel, I went through and we did... Oh, man, do I have it? Let me see if I have it real quick. Give me a second. Streaming. Oh, I don't. We went through the process of going back and forth with Marvelous Designer, and it's basically making a wing membrane using layers. So you could actually go through here. You know, it's pretty ZBrush centric. Let me just do it real quick. I think you guys will get a kick out of it here. Hold on. So what we do is we grab a cylinder here, and I'm going to make it a Polymesh 3D, and we're going to stretch that out. And you know what? Let's go ahead and do a size deformation. We'll make it skinnier. Now you could do all of this in the initialize settings too, but another thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to import just really quickly the scale guy here. So if I go in here, and this guy is set up for centimeter scale. Whoa. And if I want to make this the same size as the other guy, I think I can just go, usually I can go down here, deformation, hit unify, and then I'll go ahead and unify it to the top subtool here. And now we can kind of, I'm going to scale this down, and I'm going to move this out to the side here, and that'll be good enough. And this guy I don't need anymore. Oops, not duplicate, we'll delete. So now if I want to, I can rotate this and then I can, yeah, it'll be exported. Just really, it'll just be really, really quick. It's just a way to utilize ZBrush and layers to kind of do a little bit of a creature thing. That's kind of interesting. So I'm going to just make some bat bone thing here. And we can go ahead and duplicate this off. We can rotate this around. So now, let me rotate this around here. So this will be our wing bones here. So I'm going to merge these down here. How are we looking at just 10,000? So that'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and export these really quick. And let's look at the floor here. Yeah. And we'll go ahead and hover it over here. Okay, so I think that'll be good. Let me just make sure I know where the floor plane is real quick. Did I get rid of it? Oh yeah, you know what? I appended it to the other thing. That's right. Hold on. Sorry, I just want to double check really quickly. There we go. I can move that in Marvelous, but that's okay. So we've got this thing here. So now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick export. Everything's good. I'm going to throw this on my desktop here. We'll call this throw it in here. And let me uh-oh. Oh, crap. I don't have a license to go into. Hold on just a second here. I usually have auto deactivate on. Let me find out really quick. This is... see. There we go. And let me go back here to OBS. Give me just a second here. And okay, so if I move here, I'm going to move this back really quickly. And what I'm basically going to do is just sim this stuff here. And now if I go over here to pin, I go from here to here. So I'm going to use this as a mesh, and I'm going to use ZBrush to kind of create a tool that I can use for creature sculpting. And then I can use Z-remeshing to kind of, you know, fine-tune and stuff like that. So we can go ahead and pin this here. Oops. And now I can select this here, and we'll just change this really quickly to... there we go. So we've got this here. I'm going to go ahead and do, you know what, let's change this really quickly, sorry. So I'm going to export these back out into ZBrush here. So we're going to do, let's call this bones. I don't know what angle this is. Let's see, 90, let's call it like 135. Let's see. So we got that 135. I hit OK. And then what I'm going to do is hop back into ZBrush here. And I'm going to close these bones up. So I'm going to go ahead and let's rotate these in just a bit. We'll export this. call this bones 90. And we'll hop back, go to File, Import OBJ as why did it hop down? That's weird. Oh, you know what? I forgot to load it into something, but this will be good enough. So that'll be okay. File. We'll do it right the next time. So export OBJ. We'll call that bones 90 rig, 135 rig, bones 135. Back into ZBrush here. And we'll do one more. And rotate this down. Rotate this down. Export. We'll call this 40. And then I'm going to load as morph target here. So we'll hit OK. And that's going to actually morph it down. Whoops. There you go. We loaded as a morph target here. So when I load as morph target, if we do like bones 90, load as morph target, it'll go ahead and just, oops. It'll go ahead and just kind of animate those out. So in this case, I want to do bones 40 as a morph target. There we go. So then, now that we've got our membrane wing here, one more export. We'll go to bones 135, bones 40. Let's see if I remember to keep the naming convention correct. We'll see. So then we'll go back to ZBrush here. We'll import all those things here. So we'll go to import, and we're going to go to 40, 90, and 135. So now we got the 135 one here. We can go, actually we didn't even need to import all those. So we're going to go in here to layers. We're going to turn on a layer, and we're going to call this 90. Where's my name? So now if I go to import bones 90, there we go. So now when I crank this thing, let's go ahead and add a new layer here, and we'll call this one 40. And if we go to import bones 40, there we go. So now it should be, let me turn these off here. Interesting. I wonder, it should be flapping the should be flapping the wing here. Let me see. So 40. Give me a second. Rig we don't need. Bones 135. Make a new layer. Import as 90. There we go. So now as I change these things, it'll kind of morph down. And then we'll do a new layer here, and we'll import 40. And then as I turn these things down, we can kind of shrink this down. So now that we have this tool, if we have, you know what? Let's take our, I guess we can just make one right quick. So if we have a brush insert mesh parts here, we'll grab a little hand. So let's say we've got a little wing membrane here. So we've got a little creature arm, and let's go ahead and just give it an arbitrary angle here. So we'll kind of rotate this out. So here's our little creature arm here. If we want to put a wing membrane in between here, we can just go to Subtool, append our little wing membrane here, and then tap it, and then we can go through here, and in order to see the angle here, I'm going to go into solo mode. I'm going to hit Shift S to do a screenshot, and then I'm going to put this, and now you don't have to have the bones in there. You could have separated those out and imported just the wing. It's kind of up to you. So now we can kind of scale this down to where we want, and now I need to open this thing to the right angle. So I'm going to move this thing out, and of course, you know, depending on how wide, you can actually undercrank it if you want to. But you're probably just going to go back to 0 on both of these. So here's 0, here's the full extent. And then we can start shrinking this down. And of course, if you need to shrink it down more, you can tap into your other layer. And you can do as many individual layers as you want to, but then you can kind of shrink these things down. And now that you have your wing membrane at the right angle, we can say, okay, we're good to go. I'm going to grab this membrane here, and then we can just do a delete hidden. Okay, yeah. Once you have this, just hit bake all. Bake all, Control Shift A, delete hidden, and now this thing is part of this, and now you can just kind of merge these things together. Let's move this into place first here. And then of course, if you wanted to, you can remesh this thing. I'll just kind of move it into place here, and we can scale it down just a bit. All right, so let's say we're in ZBrush and we want to make this thing a little bit more usable, give it some thickness or something like that. So I'm going to duplicate this one off here, and because we're going to use that to snap back to, I'm going to go to solo mode here, and then we're going to go to our trusty ZRemesh. Now when we talk about ZRemesh, what I'll usually do for just general cloth is I'll ZRemesh it with an adaptive size down at 0, just to get nice even quads. But in the case of some cloth, I do want to have it looking at the topology and making decisions based on curvature of the mesh in order to kind of build that into the low res here. So I'm actually going to keep my adaptive size at, like, say 25. My target polygon count, I'll drop that down to 2, and we'll hit ZRemesh. There we go. So we got our ZRemesh here. Of course, if we want to snap back to this one here, I'm going to make sure they're both showing. I'm just going to have both of these showing here. Subtool projectile, which is just your little projectile button right here. If you want to have skin thickness, what you can do is you can go through here. Let's go into solo mode real quick, and we'll just do, I'm not going to do a Q mesh polygroup all, because in here it could get a little bit tricky with like things wanting to snap together. So instead I'm going to do an extrude and polygroup all, or all polygons. And you're going to see it flipped my geometry. So I'm going to go down here to display properties and just hit flip. And now what I can do is I still have my detailed version here, and it's not super detailed because I didn't want to sit there and wait for it to sim, but feel free to fix that up however you want. But if I just want to snap or project this top piece here, I'll just show that one, project all, bring everything back. I'm going to do a quick crease tolerance here under your geometry crease menu, just to kind of make sure I maintain my sharp edges. You could also just do crease polygroup under your crease menu, but I just want to maintain my edge border basically. So I'm going to hit Control D, isolate this top part, project all, bring everything back, Control D, isolate this top part, project all, and now if I hide that, go into solo mode here, you're going to see we have thickness here, and you also have all the details still, so you can go through here and you can like smooth the stuff out or sculpt on it at multiple subdivision levels if you want to. And you also have a membrane tool that you can, you know, put membranes and twisty stuff, and you can do all sorts of cool stuff using the layers and the layer stuff. Dynamesh solids losing detail but sharp edges, even with projection up in steps technique. Let's give it a shot. Yes, you can import, so you would, and sometimes what I'll do, I did this recently for something. I recorded so many videos, I don't remember, but I'll make like a simple pair of pants. I'll walk you through that real quick. Hey, there we go, pantsless man. So if I want to make a simple pair of pants, we will just really quickly, go on the mask pen here. Give him a cute little pair of pants. And actually, let's Dynamesh this guy first so we can get a little bit better. Whoa. There we go. So, simple pair of pants here. I'm going to duplicate him off, not delete, duplicate. There we go. Duplicate, and I guess I could use slice on that other one too, but just to show you this technique, I suppose. So we've got here, we're going to hit Control W. I'm going to isolate that, and we're going to go, and we'll do it the manual way. So we'll go into our masking, we'll delete hidden, geometry modify topology, delete hidden, mask by border, invert that mask, deformations, polish by features, just to clean that line up. And then we'll go to geometry, zero mesher. This one I'm going to change the adaptive size down to 0. We'll just do half. And then we have X turned on, so it'll do symmetrical. We can just keep doing half. And now we got a little simple pair of pants. Now, if you wanted to, yes, you could take this geometry as is into Marvelous Designer and sim it, but yeah, you won't have options available to you as far as the ability to raise or lower or some of the 2D stuff. But yeah. Okay, so, oh, that is weird. Hold on, let me see if I can throw this on my desktop here. Save image as unspecified. Let's try, see if that works. Intensity. So, oops. Dynamesh has problems link sharp. That's weird. Let me think. I'm trying to think if I've ever run into that where it has, or why it would. Maybe try turning project off. I haven't used project in Dynamesh in a long time. I wonder if it's trying to like project to something weird. In fact, usually when I Dynamesh, the first thing I'll do is I have project on as a button in my custom menu because I constantly turn it off. I turn off project, I turn off blur for every Dynamesh I do. So that might be part of it. Yeah, so if I divide that up and then go in here and hit Dynamesh, it'll just Dynamesh. And the only reason I would have project on is if I wanted to like Dynamesh at a lower resolution and then project detail back, or if I was blurring it or polishing it and wanted to project detail back. But really, well, let me try it. Let me see. We'll go in here, and I want to put a thing in here, and then let's go ahead and split them as points. And then we'll go ahead and merge these down, but I'm going to, actually that is Dynamesh already, so we can merge these. And then Dynamesh, let's do Dynamesh at high resolution. So it's a nice clean edge here. So this is going to be 2.5 million. If we do, let's do one at like a glancing angle to this one here. Make this more difficult. Got this at a weird angle. So let's go ahead and split mask points, and then Control D, and then I'll merge these down, and then I'll drop the resolution just a little bit. I don't care about the quality. I just want to make sure. So if I turn project on, usually it takes a long time too. That's why I usually have project off as well. It takes a lot longer. So there's 1.36 million. If I ever run into it, I don't know if I can reproduce it here. But yeah, my first instinct would be to say turn project off, if I had to guess. That's really weird. But yeah, I don't think I've ever run into that. Wish there was more help on that one. Cool. All right. Let me, I'm going to restart ZBrush real quick. And we will jump into, go ahead and kill Marvelous too. It's still running in the background there. There we go. Let me load up my lady. Character streaming. Female high res. See where he left off here. Okay. Oh yeah. I think I revamped her little mech suit here. I didn't feel like painting, but if you watch the other videos, you can see the whole painting process and adding more layers of depth to the painting. But I figured the really, yeah. Maybe one thing you do is ask #AskZBrush on Twitter, and they're usually Johnny on the spot with those answers. Yeah, it's a weird one. I can't reproduce it. But yeah, so we got this thing all blocked out and painted in. So I'm just going to kind of match this thing here. We went through a couple techniques where we can like mask things out and create geometry off of that. But instead what I'm going to do is, just to make it a little bit funner and a little bit easier for me, honestly, I'm going to knock this back a little bit. So we're going to go here to RGB, knock that down. I'm going to color fill object. We're just going to knock that down. So I just want to see a ghostly outline here. And then here with our subtools here, we got a bunch in there. Let's show them all. So, oh yeah, I also have multiple versions of this thing. I think I just made minor revisions, so I'm going to delete. Which one do I like better? I'm going to delete this older one here. Okay, so I'm just going to go to append Z-sphere here. Grab the Z-sphere, hit X to go across X symmetry, E to scale it down. And let's see the best way to do this here. We use W to kind of put it into place. And we can just start blocking in where this geometry needs to go. Now it's like, well, why are you using Z-spheres? Well, I think Z-spheres will work because when I get my adaptive skin off of this thing, it'll be pretty close to the shape here, and I'll be able to kind of divide it up. And it also gives me a little bit of control here too. So I can just kind of go through here, and I can kind of make the basic shape from one view, which I know is going to be completely broken when I go to another view, but because it's Z-spheres, it's just a simple matter of just going into draw mode here. Just a simple matter of making some changes. Now I don't have to match this thing specifically, and I can go in here and Z-sketch if I want to, but I just want to get the basic joints going on in here. For this thing here, we'll call that the wrist, and then I'll just drag some thumbs down here, and then go into draw mode here. And then for the palm, I'll make a palm here, and then I'll drag. I think this guy, or this gal, is only going to have 3 fingers here. So I'm going to do, you know what, let's rethink that one. Let's do a finger, and then a finger, and then a finger, and then a finger. Hold on shift, it'll give you the same size as the parent Z-sphere here. So you're going to want to drag out a finger, and then hold on shift, and now I've got 3 fingers here. And you can also make your draw size smaller, so you can just kind of get those things in there. And then if you want to, you can hit Q, go in here and make some knuckles here, and then we'll give that a little bit more of a natural pose. Now again, I'm just modeling it to this one view, so I know it's going to be broken as soon as I turn it, but that's okay. So we're going to go down here, and that's going to be the main chest shape here. So let's go ahead and drag in what can possibly be our connector shapes here, which again, it's just a thumbnail, so I don't know how well it's going to work, but at least it'll give us something here. And then I'm just going to drag these down, and then drag these down here. And again, I'm going to have like knee pads and segmented stuff going on in here. It's just a thumbnail, but we can at least kind of get this thing blocked out. And I know this is in perspective mode, so I know the heels are going to be kind of back here, but probably closer to being flat. But we'll kind of match this drawing just so I don't lose my mind at first. And then probably this will split off into 2 toes here. And then it looks like it's got like a little claw foot in the back. Something like this. Okay, so we've got our basic shape here. This stuff we can just model in later. We can try modeling it in now, but I'll just leave it alone for now. That's the basic shape I want. I'm going to go into solo mode here. I'm going to turn to the side and go, oh boy, that's terrible. So I'm going to go into move mode and just start moving these things around so they're a little bit more natural. I'm going to get the curve here, and then if I go out of solo mode here, you're going to see the body here. You know, I guess I could just keep this back. Let's move all these things back. I'm just going to hide the plane here. So we'll use move, and if you move the bones, it'll actually move down the parent joints too. So you can either move the individual joints here, or you can move entire bones back here. So you can kind of start matching this. So we know this is going to go along her thigh here, and then back out to the knees, and then this will be a big old foot. So it's going to be like straight through here. And let's go ahead and hit Q, and we'll give this a little bit more fidelity. So here's the toes that are going to kind of Tyrannosaurus Rex out here and here. Cool. And then if you want to add more fidelity in here, you can always just go in here. I am going to be just sculpting that fidelity too, so you know, pick and choose your battles here. And we'll use move. And she's going to be standing on like a platform in here. That's why her feet are going to be kind of big. And also she's holding on to just control sticks here. So let's go ahead and we can rotate these back, and also we can move these things back. So we'll go ahead and move these shoulders back here to match her shoulders a bit better. And there's her elbows. And now there's her, what is going to eventually be her wrists. And I can go ahead and move these things around here. Yeah, there you go, YouTube Pavlovich. And a long time ago, well, I've done, you might have seen some of my stuff on the Pixelogic channel. I've done some tutorial stuff for them, a lot of YouTube stuff. If you go to my YouTube playlists, go to the playlist section, you'll see a bunch of mostly ZBrush because it's fun and quick and easy to kind of do things in here. And we'll go ahead and move these around. I got my tired voice on tonight. Like, stay awake, Mike. I don't know why I'm so tired. I got plenty of sleep. Didn't overdo it or anything today. I'm just like out of it. Getting those like blurry eyes going. Okay, so we've got a hand here. Let's go ahead and rotate this around actually. Not that way, this way. That's a little bit better. And then these things are looking a little bit wimpy, but that's okay. We can always fix it in the sculpt as well. At least we'll have geometry here to kind of play around with. And I still don't know exactly how we're going to resolve that, but we'll figure it out. So we've got our mesh here. Let's move this back. This back. There we go. So now if I hit A, now if you wanted to, you can just go ahead and export or make an adaptive skin and start sculpting on it. An alternative to that is you go in here to Z Sketch and hit Edit Sketch. And then we've done this on a bunch of the, if you go to the Pixelogic YouTube channel and my playlist, or you go to my YouTube channel, go to playlist, and there will be a Twitch TV section. We've done a lot of like creature kind of Z sketching stuff where you just go through here and you can like hold down shift. And if we go back and turn on our thing here, you can just go through here. Oh, it's going to want to snap to that. I wonder if we turn on ghosts, but then we can't see it. Well, here's one thing you can do. You can go into solo mode here. You can have your sketch up here. You can hit Shift S to make a little snapshot, and then go out of solo mode. And now you can use that as reference. Turn everything off. There we go. So you can kind of use that as your guide as to how you want this to work. In this case, I'm probably not going to use Z-Sketch. I'm just going to use geometry. So there's my basic mesh. But again, if I hit A, that'll give me my adaptive skin preview, but I'm going to have to go out of Z-Sketch mode here. There you go. Adaptive skin. Under adaptive skin, the preview, you're going to see that's unified skin. Adaptive skin. You're going to see there's a density over here. You can change that if you'd like. In this case, I'll probably just keep it at 2. Just going to turn it into a Dynamesh really quick. And we'll go ahead and just keep that. So let's go ahead and go into here. This thumbnail I don't really need anymore, but we'll keep it around, I suppose. The Z-sphere I can keep it around, just turn it off if I want to, but I think I've got what I need out of it, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete. Oh, before I delete that, make sure you hit under adapt to skin, make adapt to skin. That'll go ahead and make it. I will insert this underneath the Z-sphere, and then I can just delete that Z-sphere here. So we're going to hit X to go out of X symmetry, turn off project, turn off blur. Let's hit Dynamesh. Oh, perfect. Perfect amount of resolution. This is just what I want to start with. Now, of course, you do have, each Z-sphere did make polymesh. So if there's anything in here you did want to delete, feel free to do that. But I'm just going to hit Control W, make it all one polygroup here. And that is for group mask, clear mask. But if you don't have anything masked, it will just mask whatever's there. And now that we have this, we can turn everything back on, minus our little thing here. And now we can kind of start fitting our character within this creature, or this tech suit here. Preferences, edit, turn off align cursor to service. So let's go ahead and go in here. Z-add, make sure my lazy radius is up, and then tap L to turn it off. And now we can just start going in here and kind of going, okay, so how do I want this chest piece to be resolved? Clay brush, clay tubes, clay buildup if you want. You can use some of that. Let's see how I want this to be resolved. You can also go in here and just start inserting like cylinders and stuff. And immediately right away, I'm already like annoyed that the arms are in the way. So what I'm going to do is break those off really quickly here. There we go. So right through the bicep area, you're going to see that's pretty empty. So what I can do really quickly, if I just want to kind of mimic or kind of block out that idea, I'm going to go ahead and just kill that area in there. Delete hidden. Now if I Dynamesh, it'll just close those holes. Close holes isn't a mirrored operation, so just do a quick geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld. But now this is a separate piece here, so if I want to, I can hold down Control Shift, grab a little piece of it, Control Shift A, or I can just really quickly do an auto groups, polygroups, auto groups. It's going to give you different polygroups on either side, but you can just do another quick mirror and weld. So now with that selected, you could either do a group split, you can show visible of one, do a split hidden if you want to, but now those are split off in their own subtools here. Let's go ahead and load this back up here. I don't know if I got, I probably do need to take more vitamins. That's a good point. I don't even know how healthy I am. What did I have for lunch? I had like a protein shake. That's why I'm tired today. I had a protein shake for lunch and a sensible dinner. Usually my dinners aren't so sensible and I have a little bit more energy. Trying to lose some weight. So let's see. Get back to my boxing weight. Just kidding, I never boxed. But if I had boxed, I'd probably want to get down to that weight because that sounds like a healthy weight. So we've got this here. Let's go ahead and so now that we have those arms as a separate piece here, I can just go ahead and turn those off temporarily. There we go. So now I can just kind of focus on this in here. So here we have this. I'm just going to go into H-polish here and just kind of polish this down a little bit. And it also looks like we have maybe a sphere in here for like a pair of shoulders. And we'll go ahead and split those off, split mask points here. And Alt-Tab to get back to this one. And now, because it's just a thumbnail here, we can have a little bit of fun as we go too. I'm also going to hide. I just want, I don't need all of this stuff visible. It's just kind of slowing me down. Let's see, tap, tap, tap. There we go. Okay. Now, if I am going to keep her chest armor with her, this thing will have to compensate for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and just build around it here. And I can always use this as a subtractive mesh as well. So we'll just kind of build around her pre-existing armor there. So now we've got clay brush here. I'm going to up the resolution just a tiny bit. I think I lied when I said it was high enough. It's close. It's not, and it's still not a bad resolution to start with. But like I said, because this is so, the thumbnail doesn't really have a whole lot of information, which is by its very nature is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. We can have a little bit more fun with how we want to kind of resolve these shapes together. So we'll go through here and we can kind of just use our standard brush and kind of start building this stuff up. And then if we want to, we can use maybe our move AQ, kind of maybe start pulling this back a little bit, because if you got to think, if she's using this thing to move around, unless she has a big visor over here that has like a readout of all her surroundings, she's probably going to want to kind of take a quick look around, make sure she's, unless she's got some rear view mirrors on here. So maybe we can kind of shrink that down a little bit. We can still match the thumbnail a bit, but we'll just pull these things back a little bit. It's little stuff to think about. You're trying to tell the story. It'll kind of help you develop, hopefully, your end result here. So you can kind of just start thinking about really just nothing more than logistics, how she's going to move her head around on the inside of this thing. So we've got this here, and then we've got our chest piece here. So we hold down shift. I'm going to again change this to smooth stronger. And we're just going to just obliterate through here. And now we can use trim dynamic. And again, she's more bubbly. On my channel, we've got a military guy going that I haven't revisited in a long time. We ended up doing robots. I did robots on my channel last week, on my Twitch channel. Which again, if you go to my YouTube channel, you can see the video on demand for that stuff. So it's all backed up there. But we did like robots, and then we took those in, started baking maps and stuff. But kind of along the same lines, but much more simple shape robots. This one, she's a little bit more sci-fi techie. So she's going to be a little bit more organic, but I mean, it doesn't have to be. It's just kind of feeling out what do you want it to be. And again, since we're just getting her shapes in and making sure they work okay, it's not going to be super pretty at first, but that's okay. And then here, I kind of want to start dealing with these areas a little bit separately. And I feel like this should go right up there in her hip joint here. So we got this, and then this will sweep around to the front here. Sorry, keeping my eye on some stuff here. Yeah, so we'll just pull this out front. And if we want to, we can mask this off if we want to keep that over her hip joint. And then we just move this stuff around independently, temporarily. All right. Now, if I know she's going to want some knee pads sticking out, I can go ahead and try, there we go, putting those in there. And because let's do mirror, no, there we go. Sorry, I hit group as Dynamesh sub on there. I can go ahead and pull these out to corners here. And then if I wanted to, I can go in here to like clip and start clipping these into shape if I know what shape they want to be. But I'm not sure what shape they want to be, so I'm going to use these as placeholders here. And then we'll turn them off temporarily. So we've got this coming around. So we've got knee joints that are going to be through here. And then these things are going to get massive. So I'm just going to go in here and inflate the heck out of these things here. Pull these up and back. And let's have these kind of wrap around her legs here and then kind of spill forward and out. I have the same problem. And one thing that I did with the robots, and actually let me load it up real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's see, streaming. Oh, I think they're under characters. BattleBot Salt. So the reason he's called BattleBot Salt is because I took his body from an old salt container here. So that was basically made on my channel, just really quickly kind of going through, and it was really mostly just obviously insert mesh brushes, and I didn't do a whole lot of detail pass here, but this is what we're going to take all the way through in texture and have fun with. But yeah, so just super simple shapes, just a lot of Z modeler and a little bit of Dynamesh, a little bit of detailing, but not a whole terribly amount. But on this thing, for example, yeah, this thing's going to be a little bit more organic. And I'm wondering if she's going to need more space for her legs, because I kind of do want her toes to be here. But you know what? I can also start working this toe backwards. And in fact, I can actually just pop this thing off here, split this thing off, and we will just rotate this thing around and move it maybe around back. Kind of wait for this thing to catch up. So we got toes back there waiting. let's go ahead and fatten these things up too. And again, even if they are going to be split and stuff like that, let me turn this down just a tiny bit. We can at least start with the right stuff. So we'll move this here, here. Okay, and she can kind of be standing on something in here and moving around. Okay, so let's start segmenting this thing just a little bit. And again, these knees can probably be just a separate piece here. So I'm just going to go through and maybe carve in where I want this to go. And then this, oh, I got rid of it, didn't I? Hold on. Let's go back to here. Shift S. There we go. Okay, so this I wanted to come through here, and on this side, on both of these sides, we could maybe even have a big old helper cylinder, but we'll wait off on that one for a second. And then this one can have a rod down, so we can kind of just smooth this inside area here, and then maybe build this back up, and then we can have like a support hydraulic in there or something. And then these, I'm going to take my move Acu again. Let's go to the bottom here. We got some big bird feet. We'll pull these out to corners here. And we can also, if these are actually going to be flush on the floor, I'm going to pull them past a little bit, and then I'm just going to go through here and clip these back up. There we go. So kind of got that shape going here. So yeah, now it is just a matter of clipping, clay brush, clay tube, standard brush, and just kind of trying to get a feel for what this thing needs to look like here. And I should probably pull up some reference. And if you guys haven't done it, try out, if you're so inclined, give that a shot. It's a really cool reference viewer. You can just load up like saved groups of images, and you can have them anywhere on your computer. It's free. Give it a shot. It's pretty good, especially when you're switching back and forth and you need to go from like, you know, I mean, just watch the video on if you go to the website. I did the tutorial video actually. Yeah, full disclosure, my friend Louise made that, but it's really good. So not just because he's my friend, although that's part of it, but it's a pretty cool tool. Let's see, straps for the ankles. That would be, let's see. I mean, once we get her in there and get the, actually, yeah, it looks like she needs to move forward a little bit. We can certainly see, and again, it's just a logistics things where it's like, you know, get it in there, and if you see something obvious like, oh wow, she's gonna tumble right out of that thing, then fix accordingly. And also, like just the simple stuff, like I've run into this too, where I'll put in big neck stuff and then realize like she's gonna, yeah, you know, just like the Batman costume. You know, Batman can't move his neck in the old costume, so he has to like turn his whole torso, and it's like, well, yeah, maybe that doesn't work. You know, that's got to be something different. Same thing in any sort of design stuff, where you make something that looks kind of cool, and then you go, oh yeah, that's not gonna work. They're not going to be able to bend their elbows or their knees or move their heads. Let's see how I want to resolve this thing here. So if this thing comes back through here, it can kind of be like over the shoulder. And then we can kind of pop this thing out. And then maybe she can have a latch here. And that's another thing too, is if you want to think about, you know, if this thing is padded on the inside, or if it's just kind of floating like an exoskeleton, or both, or, you know, when she wants to get out of it, do you want to make it obvious to the viewer, or do you want to message that to your audience that she's got some levers to pull, and then if she does she let go of these things to stop the hand control, and she can go through here with her small hand, and then that way, if you do that, you have to make sure she has leverage to move her arm within this area, and also any things for her to pull are sitting right here, you know, that kind of stuff. So let's see. Okay, so we've got this here. Let's see. So we can pull. And again, I don't have anything specific, and kind of got some. I got like half military, half sci-fi, and nothing is really jumping out at me as like, oh, that's what I want to do. So again, this is mostly just exploration and kind of start popping off shapes here and see if anything kind of jumps out at me. I'm still kind of keeping an eye on my thumbnail. I did like the thumbnail where it was going. That doesn't mean I'm married to it, but you know, I also want to make sure I don't lose any elements in there that really help the silhouette just because I'm over here playing around and not really thinking too hard. Also concepting, sometimes it goes really fast, and then sometimes it just is nothing but ugly babies all the way down. And if that's the case tonight, I apologize. But it's part of the process. You know, and that's why I tend to try and do this stuff offline, honestly. It just gives me a little bit more freedom, because what I'm doing right now is I'm thinking about other stuff, ZBrush Twitch streaming stuff, and that's not really conducive to you know, getting in the zone of just like, because you know what I should be thinking about is like, well, how does this thing move and how does it operate, and let me dynamesh this thing. And instead I'm like, everybody's watching me. Not really, but it is usually a little less hectic if I can just kind of throw on, you know, an audiobook or something. So now she can kind of move her arm around a little bit here, and I can just make that a shell too, because I can maintain that silhouette and just hollow it out for her arm to move around here. And of course I can also just go in here and just do a really quick, let's do a cylinder 32. I'm going to hold down Alt and then turn on double, move this out. Woo, I did a number on that one. Okay, so hold on. Let's see, 32, there we go. So if I drag this out, I don't have to hold down Alt. I can just kind of move this thing where I want it to go, and then I can go into Polyframe here. I can go to Group as Dynamesh Sub, and then just Dynamesh that out. If I have some problem areas here, I just go and inflate this stuff. Good enough. There we go. It's a quick mirror and weld. Just poke a hole through there. And again, I'm working at a super low resolution. In fact, maybe just a little bit too low. I don't want to get too high where I'm sitting here spending all my time smoothing, but I also want it high enough to where, you know, I can have a little bit of fun just kind of feeling stuff out and going through here and being like, oh, it would be cool if this was like a little thing. And then if she wanted to reach her arm over here, she could maybe grab, you can just make a quick handle. And, you know, you can make a handle a couple different ways. One way you can make a handle is you can just pull out like so, and then you can just mask one of these sides here, and let's scoot it this way. And then Dynamesh those together, and that's kind of rudimentary handle. Another thing is if you go to Brush, BI, Brush Insert Model Kit, and you can see that was made by Joseph Drust. You can hit the M key, and I think he's got 3 or 4 handles in here. So just if I just need a really quick handle, these are usually good enough for just kind of concept purposes. Just drop that right in there. So there's that. Let's think here too. So if we pop this thing over here, so this can be sitting on top of here, and if I want that to kind of flare out, I can just go in here and kind of mask that. And then invert that mask by control clicking and just kind of pull this out. That'll give it a little protective shell. Speaking of, we're supposed to be having hail tonight if you're in the Austin area with me. So park your car in your garage if you have one, or under something, ideally. Yeah, so that would kind of fit over this. And we did the exact same thing with this thing here, where we were kind of doing our helmet, and then popped our visor in here, and a little swing down, little vents and filters and little pieces here. So if you go back to the earlier workshop videos, the Pavlovich workshop videos, you'll see kind of the same process here, just a different piece. So, okay. We got this thing going. Another thing you can use is Damien standard. I'm using a lot of just standard brush at a fairly, 35 to 38 resolution here. You can also use Damien standard to kind of go through here and cut in panel lines. You can hold down Alt and kind of build up areas around panel lines. You can hit clay brush, just kind of fill in these areas as well. Let's see if I missed anything here. Position away while your weight is on your hips, like if you're seated. That's true. And I'm actually looking at some reference now, and I'm looking at one really cool one. I should have just made this one where it's a lady and she's holding like these. She's just standing, and she has her in her tech suit is basically just these giant jet, like airline jet things that she has handles on them. Really cool. But good stuff. Who would you recommend to listen or read that talks about design language? Oh man, No Man has some really good stuff. One of my favorites from way back in the day was Feng Zhu, just design principles with Feng Zhu, I think it was. Yeah, they're all really good. And I need to brush up on that stuff. I don't design things a whole lot. Most of my stuff, I tend to stay more pipeline related, like pipeline concept, pipeline workflow, iteration type stuff. So I don't, I'll help my thing, especially like on I have a CG Master Academy class, and really that's design, not just to teach people ZBrush as well, but also kind of get people in the mode of designing and being utilizing these tools for just rapid design iteration and stuff like that, to kind of get your stuff in. If you go to my you can Google Pavlovich GDC 2015, and I gave a talk that kind of tells you where my head is at. It was like making of Halo 2 anniversary, I think, and we talked about the new PBR pipelines and ZBrush's integration into our workflow. I was using the H-Polish brush here, and all of that good stuff. It's a little bit dated now, but a lot of it's still really relevant, and it just kind of goes into generally, what's important with game development and what's not important, and what's important at first and then what's important later, and not getting those two confused, that kind of thing. So yeah, H-Polish, and you can just hold down Alt to H-Polish up and then let go to H-Polish down, and then you can just really quickly, I'm not even going in and clipping yet, I'm just kind of getting these general shapes just kind of a little bit sharper here. And I also could have left those handles separate. I probably should have. Anything that kind of gets in the way of me going in here and polishing this, the handles kind of get in the way. But they're easy enough to pop off, or I can just delete them and then redrag those handles out later, because you saw how easy that was. I'm going to turn my Smooth Stronger down a little bit so it doesn't obliterate too much as I go. And now we can kind of start seeing how this thing all works. So she can move her hand this way. She can reach things within this vicinity. So if I want to do any pull tabs or any release valves or anything like that, I'm going to want to make sure they're within reach of her little hands. And we can also do cool stuff too, where she's got her big hands. Her strong hand can also do some stuff too. So maybe on the back here, we can put like a big ring or something, or I don't know, maybe not, because that would get caught on a lot of stuff too. But we can start thinking about maybe what can be integrated on the big hand here, if we'd like. I go to San Antonio every my wife's parents are in San Antonio, so we go there at least once a month. I keep wanting to go see a Spurs game. I haven't been to a basketball game in forever. I'll have to give that a shot. I can't imagine how expensive the tickets are. I guess they're doing pretty well without Tim Duncan. They didn't miss a beat. I think Kawhi Leonard had a pretty good game the other night, or so I read. I don't really watch basketball anymore. How's March Madness going? Anybody win big? Let's just move this forward here. And again, anything I'm doing through this section where it's like, you're making it all goopy and stuff, the idea is far more important than the actual object. The object is so easy to just either recreate from scratch or just rebuild and all that good stuff. Making sure that it's what you want is way harder. To clip this thing back, I'm going to go out of, hit X symmetry, turn that off, delete that one, and then I'm just going to clip this side back here. I'm just going to get that out of the way here, and then we can just do a quick mirror, and weld. And then we're back. Okay, so we got multiple layers to this. We got this poking through here, so let's go ahead and just use our standard brush and just dig this back. We can also start thinking like if she's walking around, does she need some lights in here? If you want the lights just moving forward, you can go in here and insert cylinders, and there's another brush if you're going to do a lot of them. So let's see how this is tilted back. You can go into, let's raise that resolution just a little bit more. There we go. You can go to our comma key here. We'll go to brush, elemental PQR S trim, and we'll do trim hole, and this is camera based, so if we hold down Alt with trim hole, that'll just pull a cylinder straight forward. So even if you were just using this as a base to kind of maybe put a light bulb in or a couple light bulbs in, you could just drop them in here in lieu of dragging in a cylinder. And then now that you have those surfaces, you can just H polish them back and go in here with your clay brush here, hold down Alt, and then if you wanted to, you can just put extra lights in there or whatever you want. And those may not be lights, we'll figure it out, but just as kind of a demonstration there, that's one way you could do it. Let's see here. Let's do something cool along the back. It's looking kind of iffy. So what's going on underneath? If I go into transparency mode, you see, oh, okay, she's got some cool things going on here. Let's mark those, the trajectory of those things here, and let's see if we can at least make these things look like they're somewhat integrated. I could poke a hole through here and attach them if I want. The cool thing about this, and even her character itself, is, her bodysuit is built up in layers, and then she has armor on top of her bodysuit, and then she has a tech suit on top of her armor. So all of those things should be integrated, right? Like, it's part of your storytelling process. Just going through here and kind of seeing like, well, yeah, if she pops her armor back into her big old tech suit, it would be cool if some of these things hooked up or a little thing came down and screwed in. And that can kind of just drive your design decisions too, in a cool way, hopefully. How's Russia doing? Yeah, I think I'm from Russia, Pavlovich, or maybe I think somewhere along there, way back when, or Serbo-Croatian, something like that. Structure of overhead look like the intake on a jet engine for cooling. Yeah, we could do that. So I'm wondering, because that's another thing too, is like, yeah, air filtering and having these hoses maybe connect down into like a cooling tank or something in here. And you see how easy it is. It's like, oh, do I like that? No. Well, then just get rid of it. Or drag your undo slider back, And also kind of playing around. Let's also go back into our clay buildup here. And if it's wreaking havoc, so if you got a really thin mesh and you do this kind of stuff and then you Dynamesh and you get really thin stuff, I bring this up everything, but every time we do a stream, but auto masking, turn on backface mask, and then it won't suck through meshes like that. So there was a cool thing on here that I kind of want to keep, or at least try, is kind of these kind of broken off shapes here. And then, yeah, let's go ahead and get rid of that. So this, and then here, we can kind of maybe try something here. And again, I don't know that it's going to work, but I'm just going to put those silhouette shapes in here. And then we can go back in with our clay brush here. And we can just kind of see how maybe we can integrate those shapes in a bit. And then I can go back in here with my move brush and my move Accu. And we can kind of just pull these things around we'll just kind of smooth these back and see if anything kind of jumps out at me as we continue. And it looked like these things were also way bigger, or I just moved these things out quite a bit. And again, I'm not married to the thumbnail. I'm just trying to see if I need to integrate stuff, or I can like maybe pull these things together here, like so. Let me crank up my smooth brush again. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, the most hardest core of sci-fi in the history of sci-fi. If you wanted to, you can go like kooky with it and just put big old headphones. Like, what would be a sci-fi suit I would want? Well, I'm going to need headphones to jam out to my tunes. You can put a boombox on here. You can go look up, and if you wanted to do like an 80s themed tech suit, that might be kind of cool too. Just kind of like spitballing ideas. If you needed like visual, like a visual style, it's really cool to kind of, I'm just doing super duper generic off the top of my head style. But if you wanted to do something, it's certainly nice to have those kind of shape languages to pull from certain eras. You know, if you wanted to do it, you know, like 1950s is an obvious one that people do a lot, or like steampunk is another obvious one. But you can also do like 1980s, like see if you can kind of integrate like cassette decks and I don't know what else happened in the 80s. Cassette tapes, that's all I remember from the 80s. Boom boxes, and I guess I'm more of a child of the 90s. I was born in the 80s. Most of my formative years, I believe, were early 90s that I remember. Let's see. Question about politics. Interesting. You've been a Mass Effect. Yeah, I don't know that I'll weigh in on that one, but it has certainly caused a lot of ruckus on the internet. I'll give it that. I will say, making video games is hard. It is hard work. Believe me. It is not the most straightforward process at all, especially, man, like the scope of video games nowadays is ridiculous. It takes so much and so many people and so many like good, smart people too. It's not just like, you know, nobody good is working on these games. It's always funny to like look at reviews of games I've worked on, and or go on the like threads and kind of read what people say about, you know, kind of the armchair quarterbacks of game development, where they're like, they did this because of this, and it's all because of this, and I'm I'm sitting there going, man, I thought I did a okay job, you know, and turns out you really didn't like that, you know, that kind of feeling. Or even if I know, you know, yes, this thing is broken, but here's why. You know, it's always so many moving parts, so many different engines and people and departments, and you know, especially the bigger the game you make, I almost, you know, there's some days where I'm just like, you know, what'd be cool, like a platformer where you get 3 lives, and like I want to make Contra. I can't do sprite art for crap, but I don't know, maybe I could learn. Maybe I could do some 8-bit graphics and just go back to like maybe I know they've got some engines out there, some platformer engines. Maybe I can just plug in some artwork and just do a platformer. It just seems like that would be a cool, fun, do a Mario Maker type game. Because man, as soon as you start going into dialogue and blend shapes and scan data and, you know, deconstructing blend shapes and all of that good stuff, it gets real complicated real quick. Not to say it isn't fun. I'm not trying to turn anybody off from doing video games. It's the funnest thing in the world. That's why I do it. And it's the challenge of the video games, the real-time solutions that makes me more interested. And that's why I'm kind of waiting for VR to hit critical mass so that there will be a lot more opportunities for 3D artists. And I go into this in my GDC 2015 presentation too. A lot more opportunities for 3D artists to kind of branch out. Instead of just doing film and games, it'll be like, you work on a virtual museum, or you go and reconstruct some historical sites, or you work on vacation walkthroughs or real estate stuff, because there's going to be a lot of 3D that's going to be needed, at least for those types of experiences, or walk on planet Mars, that kind of thing, where 3D artists are going to be needed. But I don't think VR has hit critical mass. No, it hasn't. As soon as your grandma is using VR, then we've hit critical mass. Until then, we're not there yet. And that's another thing too, even when we're talking about hardware like pressure sensitivity on devices, is that people who need that, artists who need that, are such a small segment of the population that, I always say we end up waiting for like Bill Belichick to need better NFL sideline pressure sensitivity making plays before we'll get pressure sensitivity on our devices for like drawing or sculpting, just because the market for manufacturing, the market for businessmen making signatures is far larger and more important. And moms and dads wanting to make notes with a pencil or a virtual stylus is the real market, and that's what VR has to hit, is that critical mass of everybody, not just gamers, not just enthusiasts, because that's not a market. It's everybody. Everybody has to do it. That's where the numbers are. I don't mean to pick on poor Bill Belichick, but just using him as an example. Let's see where I left off here. Branches are restrictive. It depends on what you're interested in. I'm not saying like, I hope all 3D, everybody has to make toothbrushes and toothpaste commercials. It's like, no, we'll always have entertainment aspects. It's just more viable markets for 3D to go into, for 3D students and 3D professionals to kind of go into another market that isn't necessarily, not that there's anything wrong with video games and film. I love doing that. I don't think I'm ever going to leave necessarily, but I also think it would be kind of cool to absolutely work on, you walk in like on my GDC 2015 presentation, the experience of walking into a virtual museum, and you can go into see the mummy's casket and pick it up and look around it. But what if you wanted to go see where it was dug up? So you go, hey, VR, whatever, take me to the place where you dug this up, and then you got the photogrammetry of where they pulled the casket from, and you can kind of see where it existed. And then you can go, hey, actually take me back to when they just shoved it into place and walked out. And then in order to do that, you would have to reconstruct and recreate all that stuff. And I think that would be a blast to work on, or maybe not. Maybe it'd be really boring to work on, but it would still be, I'm sure somebody would have a good time working on that, possibly me included. But again, it's just viable avenues for 3D artists to get into. And that, there's a lot of other stuff like forensic reconstruction for crime scenes or cold case files or all sorts of cool stuff. Or maybe not. Maybe you don't think it's cool at all, but somebody does. All right. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of talking and not even paying attention. So let's see. This thing's going to go down here. like this, and this can be maybe a latch here. Now these things go back into her suit here, so those can kind of connect up. So I'll keep those around. I can still kind of change their shape a bit, make a big brush here and kind of move this stuff around. Going with my clay brush here, and we can kind of maybe stick something inside of there. Or again, you know, if I end up moving this stuff around a lot, I can go back and recreate those with cylinders or the trim hole that we used earlier, or just the clay brush. And she's going to need to bend through her waist probably, so I might just end up cutting all of this out. Let's see, because yeah, she doesn't need a bunch of this underarm stuff. Now this is going to have to be supported by something, but let's clear it out first, and we'll figure that out later. So I'm going to mask all this stuff off. How are we doing on time? Losing track of time here. Sorry about that. Let's go through here. I'm just going to kill all this mess in here. We'll leave that. We'll just mask this here. I've seen a lot of those things where pineapple on pizza is just like blasphemous, and I don't know. I like trying all the flavors. That doesn't mean I can't enjoy a good margarita or pepperoni pizza, but I'm also not going to blaspheme or rag on anybody who wants to try pineapple pizza. See. Okay, so we deleted that here. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and split these legs off too. They're kind of getting in the way. So I'll go here, lasso. Let's go ahead and hold down Alt, and we'll just kill these bottom pieces here. We're going to split those off. Now this one, let's do a quick save. And if you hover over quick save, you'll see that the hotkey for that is 9. And then we'll just dynamesh this shut. You can clean this stuff up if you'd like. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I'm just going to kind of give it a slight inflate to get rid of those little raggedy edges here. And another thing you can do is you can go to the smooth brush modifiers, and you can do the min connected down to 1, and that'll kind of help you get rid of some of those pinpoints that can happen sometimes. Or you can just control shift, you can just kind of get rid of them that way. Yes, good point, Axel Chamberlain. So with VR, they have to run at, what is it, 90 frames a second minimum, and you're having to render much wider field of view, and so much higher resolutions are required, and just like anything else, it'll get there. Hardware will improve, techniques will improve, engines will improve, tools will improve, to where eventually we will be able to, what's the old joke, run Crysis on your VR machine in VR. But yeah, until then, it's a bit of a hit having to deal with hardware limitations as is for VR, especially if you're doing stuff for, like, you know, I have a Note 5. Is that the number? What's not the one that explodes on planes, but the other one? The one before that one, I have that one. And, you know, and I can kind of do VR on that one, but I can't imagine trying to make something for that and still maintain any sort of fidelity. Not to say it can't be done. There's all sorts of tricks, but it's not, you know, we got to a point in video games where it was like, okay, we can start throwing polygons at the problems. We can start throwing texture res at the problems, where we got fast enough hardware to where it's not, we can start just kind of pushing the limitations of, you know, polygon fidelity and all sorts of particle effects and, you know, liquid fluid effects and all this good stuff. And then VR comes along, and there's certainly some severe hardware restrictions on performance that can kind of kill a lot of that. And that's not to say you can't do cool stuff on it, for sure. You just have to kind of dig deep into your bag of tricks. And that's really all game development is digging deep into your bag of tricks and trying to make something look good, but run real time. And we got kind of not complacent. I mean, we just got kind of used to being able to be like, you know what, we can actually put polygons on these characters. We're not limited to like 300 polygons, and you got to paint an entire body on like a front-facing polys here, you can actually model in and make it 50,000 polygons. Go for it. And now we're back to, all right, forward-facing sprites. I'm going to go back to that. That runs in VR. What else we got? Super low poly counts. Let's bake in all our shadows back into the diffuse map and the color maps. Let's go back to, all those little baked-in lighting and limiting our dynamic lights and all the stuff. Which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's problem solving. So if you're into problem solving, video games is a good industry for you. And even between the different departments, problem solving on characters is, there's a lot of overlap between problem solving on characters, problem solving environments. But problem solving on static meshes versus skeletal meshes is also another thing too, with joint limitations and how things deform and blend shapes versus vertex animation and all the stuff that has to kind of come together and run and be baked down or faked or painted in or not, and depending on the type of game you're making. So many, a lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of interested parties. To get that all the crescendo together, and hopefully everybody is like, I ran around and shot people and it was pretty fun. I got a kick out of doing that. And then it's like, yes, whew. I didn't say anything about my horrible art. And that's usually, we as artists tend to overthink a lot of art development too, where you spend so much time and effort on whatever, and this is part of the GDC presentations too, where you spend so much time and effort on something, and then a lot of it ends up being like, oh, this is like a hallway you run through in 10 seconds on a campaign, or in multiplayer it's in a shadow, or you spend all this time on a little noodly thing over here and it ends up being a ceiling vent and nobody cares. And even if it is a hero piece and you spend a lot of time, chances are most people playing it are having far more, being far more interested in shooting each other in the face than they ever will be on any sort of cool handle or vent, and not to say that they're not refined enough or artistic enough to get it. It's just not that important. And I say that as an artist. It's sure, do a good job. Sure, tell a story with your design. Sure, do good designs and all of that stuff. But not at the expense, certainly, of making a game that's not as fun, because at the end of the day, it's people running around shooting each other, or whatever the game is. I say that because I worked on a lot of FPSs, but whatever the game is, that's always what needs to be reinforced in your design and what you're working on, and always keep that in the back of your head, that design-driven, fun gameplay, fun mechanics, make sure everything you do is supporting all of that. More so than, ooh, is my texture stretched? Let me fix that. Well, maybe not. Maybe you do. I mean, do a good job, but pick and choose your battles sometimes. Yes. Yeah, it's not. On VR, it's not something you just kind of port over. It takes a lot of ins and outs. To answer your question, I'm making just a sci-fi tech suit on this sci-fi lady, and I'm actually doing more flapping my jaw than I am that. I apologize for that, but we're getting some work done here. Maybe not quite as fast as I would like, but you know what? Oh well. I'm tired today. Didn't get my vitamins. Cool. All right, so we've got this thing here. Let's plug this in. Pop this in. Okay, and again, I'm still thinking about, like, if she needs to, she can grab stuff within this vicinity. She has total range of motion through here now, and this will kind of be maybe a blast shield or maybe just some sort of protective thing, or it doesn't have to be just like armor. This could be like a dock loading thing. I don't know. It doesn't have to be militarized. but that's usually where I end up taking things, but we'll see how it goes. So now this is where we get into, does this backpack need to be supported through either an external exoskeleton, or can I just connect these pieces here, and does the mind go, well, there's going to be a lot of tension at that point because it's, holding up 300, well, geez, I don't even know what this stuff is made out of, but let's say 1,000 pounds worth of armor up here, and it's the future, it's sci-fi, so yeah, I probably could. But really what's more important is, does it convince the viewer, or does it convince the user? Does it look odd? Like, even if, there's all sorts of stuff in the real world that if you make it and somebody sees it and they're like, it looks weird. And then, don't make those things. Even if it perfectly matches your reference, if it looks weird, then rethink it. So in this case here, I would probably connect something here, and then looking from the back, maybe see if I can't do maybe a down and over across her butt or something. We'll kind of figure that out. And also looking from the back here, I don't really like that silhouette, so I'm also going to kind of maybe pull this in. And that's another thing too, is silhouette always changes, so you always want to be working in the round, and don't get too caught up in like front view, back view, because in the game she's going to be like running around and spinning around and flying at you. So it's more about this than it is about this. Like, does this look perfect? Because who cares if just the back view looks perfect, unless your game is about, it's called like backviews.com. In that case, then absolutely make all your back views perfectly beautiful. Okay, so this thing here, I probably should have kept that separate, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and Dynamesh this. I haven't done a quick save in a while. And just to be safe, I'm just going to reload this last one here. Have I ever used a procedural texture program like Designer Filter Force? Yes, I've used Substance Designer a lot. Not necessarily to make alphas in ZBrush, but I don't see why not. And that would be good for, procedural tiling stuff would be great for it. But usually what I use alphas for in ZBrush especially is doing stuff like, let's do this. Let's go to brush here. No, not these ones. We can just go to brush, insert model kit. Usually most of my alphas end up being more stuff like this kind of thing. So if I wanted to make something like this here, oops. My brain just went. There we go. Make polymesh 3D. And just in case you didn't know this, geometry, modify topology, you can do mesh from brush and then any brush you have selected. Incidentally, I don't know if I've ever brought this up. If you wanted to say, just put all of the, that's a bit much. Let's do a little tangent here, sorry. Let's do industrial parts here. So we've got all of these brushes in here. Let's say you want to just recreate this brush and start appending stuff or making your own. You can go in here. One of the ways, you can make a plain 3D, make polymesh 3D. And as you're dragging these out, you're going to want to go to brush modifiers. And let's see if I can remember how to do this. So this is the multi-select, cycle through the meshes when insert mesh. So I'm going to cycle through. And if I do one, it goes here to here to here. So it'll start cycling forward like that. So if I do that, and I, go from the front view here, it doesn't even matter if they're the same size or not, because I'm going to unify them at the end. But just go ahead and just count how many you need to make. I'm going to isolate all of these things. I'm going to delete that. If I go to subtool here, I'm just going to do a quick. These all have polygroups and stuff, which is fine. If I just do an auto groups, that'll go ahead. Now this thing is multiple groups here, so I'm just going to grab all of this one here, Control Shift A, Control W, just so I can really quickly do a split to parts. Or I'm sorry, a group split. And obviously, now that I think about it, I shouldn't have dragged these out at an angle, because what I'm going to have to do now is when I go over here to deformation, there we go, unify, repeat to other. That'll go ahead and unify everything on my screen, looking straight forward. And then you're going to want to have to go through here and like reorient these. And so once you've done that, once you have all of these kind of sitting there, you can go to and orient them how you want. Go to brush, create insert multi-mesh, and that'll go through all your subtools. And now you've got your new insert mesh here with all these things loaded. Now obviously I have doubles in here because I kept dragging out further than I should have. Anyway, not that we needed to know that, because all I wanted to show you guys was these were the kind of alphas that I would usually end up making. I'll just use my mRGB Z grabber here. Just drop that on my mesh. You can hold down shift. You want to make it square. And then, yeah, there's my alpha. So this is how I would make most of my alphas, is just creating a piece of geometry in ZBrush. But procedurally also, I'm not good at it, but you can also make a wrap tiling mesh in ZBrush and then populate that with Joseph Drest has a thing you can Google where he goes through and does like tiling nano meshes. So you can kind of do that kind of procedurally too if you wanted to use ZBrush for that. But yeah, to answer your question, long story short, yes, absolutely. I should be a Foley artist. I can do sounds with my mouth. I can make clip-clop noises like horses make. I'm pretty good. A lot of practice as a kid playing Ninja Turtles, making sound effects. Not Michael Winslow good, but pretty good. So we'll go here, move this up into here. How we doing? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the procedural tiling stuff is a good one. And again, most of that stuff, if I'm feeling it and I want to do, like, you can certainly do a lot of the tiling in ZBrush with the surface noise and the noise maker and kind of doing that kind of stuff. Or I could just, if it's usually and this is just a production thing more so than a hobbyist thing, or like if I'm doing stuff on my free time for fun, or certainly if you're doing statues for 3D prints, it's a different story. But for production purposes, if it doesn't break the silhouette, I'll usually just end up doing it in the texture just as height. Here I'm pulling through the other side, so I want to make sure I have my, now backface masking isn't global, so I have to go in here and like do it for all my brushes here. Move brush, I usually keep that off because I rarely want to move the front side of a surface and not the back side too. But yeah, like trim, H polish, clay brush certainly, clay buildup certainly, standard brush certainly. Go ahead and turn all those on. So anyways, here. So that can connect here. And then, yeah, back here, we could have this thing kind of split off. And once I get this thing all concepted out, we'll go back through. And that'll actually be a lot easier for me as far as my brain, because I can do brainless remeshing and refining shapes all day long, whereas concepting's a little bit more of I have to sit there, and it's better if I sit and think about it and ruminate and gather reference as opposed to just kind of winging it. Because right now, like I said earlier, me talking and winging don't necessarily go together. I mean, I can kind of stumble my way through it and I'll get something okay, but then I'll go back later and just kind of do a little thoughtful pass. There we go. Okay. And then this thing I'm just kind of following. How are we doing? Okay. I'm just kind of following the shape. We're still kind of keeping the S curves of the body. I don't want to lose, the back to the front. I want to maintain these nice S curves of the human body, but I just want to kind of exaggerate them. So again, I'm borrowing from, if you go back, we do an anatomy lesson on, I think, workshop number 1, where we built her, where we went through and we start with a skeleton. So you'll remember from that, the thigh muscles, the hamstrings, the quads, kind of pull in and towards the knee like this. I'm kind of maintaining that shape for now, and this could always be subject to change, but for now I'm kind of maintaining that shape here. And then as the knee comes down through here, I'm also kind of going to probably mimic how the tibia has an S curve here. So it's going to kind of cut in, like if this was a big old tibia, you would have your soleus and your gastrocnemius back here, and then you'd have your big old shin bone right through here. Let me crank my smooth up to 100% here. that kind of thing. So you can kind of just mimic the curves of the body, and that kind of is a nice aesthetic feel for your shapes. And it's not necessarily something you want to do for everything. I'm not saying this is how you should do tech suits always, but this is certainly how I'm choosing to do this tech suit because it complements her figure in a way that's aesthetically pleasing. Now, if you want to go against that, or if you want to do, for a certain reason, obviously do it for anything you do, you want to do it for a reason. But, there's certainly arguments to be made to not do that, depending on the look you're going for. So we'll take this here, and I'm just going to pop this shin. We're going to make this really heavy, and I'm actually going to have this, I'm trying to remember back from the thumbnail. Give me a second. I don't know why I went all the way out. All I got to do is go down here, solo, edit mode, and Control N to clear. Keep losing that thing. Doesn't have to be big, just needs to be there. So here I kind of had this kind of overlapping kind of feel in there. I'm going to see if I can't maintain that. So I'm going to go into here. We can kind of go through here. We can kind of just pull. Sorry, I keep saying kind of. This forward here, so this will be kind of armored, and then this will kind of overlap. So I'm just going to really quickly, and this is no different. This is why I love teaching 2D artists and illustrators ZBrush. And they usually, the hardest people I teach professionals, I teach students, the hardest time I have teaching people is usually professionals, and especially professionals that have been using 3D for a long time. That's obviously a blanket statement. That's not true every time. But just like if you give me a student who doesn't even know what 3D is, they will have ZBrush pretty much down by the end of class. And not all of it, but the basics, and they'll be able to navigate and kind of start making a cool little clay guy. Depending on the professional and the general attitude of the professional, it could be a week of hair pulling, and then they just flip their desk over and they're just like, I don't get it. I need this particular menu in order to do 3D. Which is fine. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. It's just a them thing. But yeah, I'm always so I teach do a CGA Master Academy class where I do ZBrush stuff, and then at Gemini here in Austin, it's Gemini School of Visual Arts I teach, and oh my God, the students are always, and they do a lot of 2D first. I don't get them until like third year, and they're always so good. Like, it's ridiculous how quickly they just go in there, and I kind of show them like, hey, you can just kind of move stuff around, and they're like, oh, cool. And then they take, and I'm also like, oh, the other cool thing, hey, you have a perspective button. You never have to do perspective again. And also, like lighting, you can just hit a light, and then you have cast shadows. It's so easy. All that rendering and perspective you just learned, throw it away. No, I don't tell them that, but it's certainly a good tool for that type of thing, and we'll get into some of that stuff eventually. A lot of the students use it for just blocking out environments and blocking out shapes so that they can do like stylized renders and get what 3D is good at, which is working in the round. And like once you make something, you got it made for life. You can just pose it into different ways and render it. And you don't have to sit there and draw it all over and over and over again. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't practice drawing or anything like that, or you need to replace all the comic book pencilers with modelers. I'm not saying that at all. But it is a good tool. I don't think anybody could deny that. And I'm going to temporarily, this is kind of bugging me, so I'm going to go, you know what? Go out of X mode. I'm going to delete that one here. I'm just going to kind of work on this side here, because I can always do a quick mirrored weld here, because I'm not certain I'm digging those round things. Like my gut always tells me, like when I'm doing the robot thing I showed you, just put big wheels where things turn, but on this thing I'm not so sure it works that well. I'm not sure I'm digging that with her aesthetic. So I'm going to do instead, and I'll probably get rid of this thing too. We'll see. Yeah, I probably will. I'm also kind of not digging the weight and the balance on this leg here. Here to here. And you can also just use H polish to go ahead and flatten these surfaces too. And once we get down to like detailing this thing out, you know, obviously I'm not going to sit here and sculpt each toe individually. I'm going to break it apart and refine it and then start rebuilding it, probably with Z Modeler. Or, you know, all the tricks we've learned. If you go back through, we do a whole hard surface pass on hard surface techniques. Right now I'm just in blobby old block out phase. I could start pulling in some of those techniques, but I don't want to do it too early just because, again, I could just trash everything I've done tonight. So if I start doing too much technique-y stuff, it's nice for nice clean shapes, and it is nice for concepting too. I'm not saying that. Don't do it, but I think I'm going to forego that tonight. And all I'm talking about is like if I extracted this thing and Z-remeshed it and made like a little panel for this part here, I could do that really quick. But again, I'm still kind of going through here and just pulling all this stuff around. So if I extract something, then I have to merge it down if I want to move it with something else. So it's just a little bit easier to kind of just do this now. Move this over. Let's see. So knee here. Maybe I need to rotate that knee out a bit too. And for that, I can just go into mask lasso here, blur that, invert it, drop a line. You can just kind of rotate around this axis here. We'll pull that back. And you also notice I don't generally work in perspective. I mean, I will try to remember that if I'm doing portraits or something, but for hard edge stuff, I just leave it off. Now, of course, you want to turn it on. You can just hit P to turn that back on as needed, just to kind of evaluate, make sure your silhouettes and everything's still working. But let's see, this little knee piece here can kind of go down. Rotate around this thing here. Let's go ahead and knock this back. Maybe if we go like circle to a shape. And just remember you can always H polish as well. And again, you can hold down Alt and that'll polish up or pull up, and then you can just let go of Alt and that'll pull down. Yeah, and going around the back too. So she's standing in it. Maybe she slips her feet into a full boot, or I can cut all of this out. She could be standing on a platform back here. Let me think. Standing on that, does that make sense? In that case, if we did have that, I would definitely want to put some sort of strap or something to hold her in. If we don't do that, I can maybe just kind of build up a big, these will be like big boots she puts on. And you know what? Let's get rid of these things here. I can just recreate those. I don't need those sitting back there. For toes, I'm trying to look at the thumbnail here too. I think that'll work. I'm going to use the trim dynamic to kind of push that up. And then this can kind of encase a couple of toes here. And then these things can kind of split right out of there. Give those toes a little bit of an arch coming down. and ankle rotation as well. So let's go ahead and figure that out. And if we want to just continue this around to the side here. So we've got this. It'll need to kind of come up. So if her foot is here, if we want her ankle, like maybe she got a platform in there that actually drives this movement. I mean, it can still be offset, so it's not a big deal. But if we were so inclined, we could mark right where that pivot point is and maybe have it turn from there. But if that looks awkward, we could just pull this around here. I personally, I use Maya for production and stuff. If you haven't, I would give ZModeler a shot. There's a lot of really cool things about ZModeler that I like a lot. Sculpting aside, if we go in here to, grab any shape here. So this kind of stuff is really cool. The ability to do this group by normals here. These are different polygroups, so this would be the equivalent of, like, say, a selection set within Maya. So if you wanted to, like, extrude this, you can go here to Q Mesh Polygroup All, and in Maya you could extrude this. But if you want to keep track of these faces, it would be a selection set, which is a gigantic pain to do. Now you could recreate them and stuff, but in ZBrush all it is just maintaining these polygroups, and they're always visible. And you can always just, you can Q Mesh. Let's just Q Mesh a single poly here. You can just drag through. You can bridge two things. So if we go to Q Mesh Polygroup All, so you have these targets here. Now if we just tap here, it'll remember the last Q Mesh here. So you just keep tapping, it'll do that. You can do this and hold down Shift. And I'm not going to evangelize, like, which one is the best. I don't know. You're extruding polys. Have fun extruding polys. But I will say there's a lot of things in ZBrush that I really like that are either take a long time to do in other programs. We'll bridge these two holes here. Or would just be impossible. And one of the biggest things here is just the ability, and that there's a ton of other stuff too. I won't get too detailed into it, but the ability, these polygroups here are an amazing resource. And you could recreate some of this stuff, and also just the ability to kind of mark through here, and we can just Q Mesh, maintain these, or we can go and use these as an inset here. And then we can also just like inset a region. And then we can, what do we want to do? Q Mesh these, and then, I don't like this middle one, so we'll just Q Mesh a single poly and just pull that through, and that'll go ahead and get rid of that. Or if we do Q Mesh Polygroup All, that'll grab all these different polygroups, which is useful sometimes. That's not what you want. You can just do Island, pull this out, and it'll just maintain this polygroup island here. Do I have X turned on? No. This isn't rotated toward the X-axis or anything. You can also just Alt-Tab, or drag, and you can just paint polygroups really quickly. You can make new polygroups here if you want to do like a polygroup polyloop. You can just go through and tap here. You can do faces, so now we can do like Q Mesh Polygroup All, and if we do Polygroup All, it'll do both of these, obviously. Also, you can just go Q Mesh Single Poly, and now you can just pull through these sides, and now you don't have to like delete a face, bridge, or all that stuff. It's super duper, just like bloop, done, or bridge, done, all that good stuff. So yeah, sculpting, it's a no-brainer. Even modeling, though, there's a lot of modeling stuff you can do in ZBrush that are pretty easy. And you also have access to the dynamic tools here under geometry. You got the dynamic subdiv here, so you can just really quickly preview, D and Shift D, creasing that you can do and all that good stuff. It's good stuff. Give it a shot if you haven't. I think my most popular YouTube video is, first, it must have been good timing or something, because it was just a stupid thing I did for when I was teaching at Gemini. I was like, oh, the kid, ZModeler's kind of newish. I'll run them through. I had my laptop. I was recording through the crappy laptop microphone, so you hear the kids laughing in the background, and I'm just kind of doing a little ZBrush thing, and I put that on YouTube just because, and that thing has 10 times more views than any other video I have on my entire site. But yeah, give ZModeler a shot if you haven't yet. It's got some really nice tools, and we'll definitely get more into that, especially when we get into like refining some of these things. So if we did, let's just do one thing here. Let's find a piece. Like if I want to kind of play with the shape a little bit more, what I can do is just like, I'll duplicate this off temporarily, and we'll go through here, and we'll like mask this shape here. Here's another thing too we don't really talk about. So if you hold down Control, I have a mask convex. So if I change that to mask convex, you can do a mask that'll respect border edges. Basically, I think Joseph Dress did a demo on this. If you open up depth, you see I have depth mask turned on. If you take this end, hold down Control, take this end ring here and do your inner depth. Don't do it all the way to 0, but do it to like a very small value. 0.02564 will work. And then when you hold down Control, it'll like maintain your border edges, so you can just a little bit quicker to go through and just kind of mask stuff. Now this is a goopy mesh. If it was a cleaner mesh, it would maintain the border edges even better. But just FYI, it's a nice one to have. But you can also switch back to mask pin. Hold down Control Alt, and we can just clean up this mask here. So if we wanted to, say, do a little bit of ZModeler stuff and use some of ZBrush's tricks too. We could let's get a shape here, hit Control W, and we'll just isolate this thing here. So we'll just isolate this polygroup, because when we hit Control W, it just isolates that polygroup. I had a little bit of a mask up here. It's no big deal. I'm going to delete hidden. We'll do a quick auto groups, and then I'll just isolate this one, delete hidden. Now with this here, I have a macro that'll go ahead and polish my polygroup borders. You can also do it manually. And the reason I'm doing this is because we'll mask the border, invert that, we'll do a polish by features. So when ZRemesh goes to recreate this geometry, I don't want to get it caught up in those aliased edges. So we can go here, I'm just going to use my custom menu, go to ZRemesher. We're going to take our adaptive size down to 0. I just want nice even quads. Our target polygon count is fine. I'm just going to do half, and then we'll hit ZRemesh. I'm going to turn polyframe on so we can kind of see what it's doing. We'll hit half. And we can just kind of recreate this basic shape. And I'm just looking for a dumbed down version of that shape so that it's just fewer points to pull around. I can make these nice and smooth. And the fewer points you have, obviously, the smoother the transition is going to be when it averages the vertices. Now you can also use your move, what was I talking about? Move Acu to pull these out to corners if you want, or pull these things into corners if you want. And again, just because you have fewer points, you're just able to make these shapes a lot quicker. Now if I go back here, let's go ahead and let's stay in Sullivan. So if I'm just doing this thing here, we can kind of just move this thing into place. And if we like this, what we can do is, let's do a quick ZRemesh same. I'm not digging that triangle right there. We could fix that in ZModeler. Let's see what this does. Same. There we go, that'll work. So now we've got this shape we like here. So if we want to go in and do some ZModeler shenanigans, what we can do is we can go QMesh, polygroup all. If I pull in, it's going to want to flip those. So I'm just going to do a quick flip my vertices, which for you guys will be under display properties, flip. And so now that that's good, we can do a quick, under your crease menu, you'll have a crease PG. And now when I hit D to do a dynamic preview, you can kind of see that shape through here. You can also do a crease tolerance, so that'll get those sharp corners for you. And now we can kind of, and again, just while it's in dynamic preview, you can go through here and you can move the stuff around. You can even use your sculpting tools, because all it is just polygons. So feel free to like use your clay brush, use your polish brush, do whatever you want to this thing here. And then if you wanted to get fancier, it's a simple matter of like, okay, I want to put if I want to put a border around this thing, I could do QMesh polygroup all. We can pop in a border here, and then I could do another QMesh polygroup all. And now we've got kind of a border. Actually, it looked like it. Oh, so in these tight areas here, QMesh will want to sometimes snap pieces together. Let's see. Let's do if a, oh, you know what might be? It might be a little edge I need to collapse in here. Let's see. Yeah, sorry about that. let's collapse that edge here. Yay. Okay, so we will do, yeah, QMesh, polygroup all. We've got this kind of shape here, and then we can kind of give it a little border here on both sides, or you can just do polygroup island. I'll just do the front piece here if that's what you want. Let's do Shift-D temporarily. Then we can go through here, then we can mark some of these things for delete if you want, and then, oops, then you can just QMesh these back. And now when we go to smooth subdivide, you can kind of start doing this stuff. Now, obviously, I pulled it from a very globby, rough shape. Probably would have been better for me just to take a cylinder in there, mask that out, and actually do slicing, which when we start refining this thing, probably that's what I'll do. But yeah, when you start from a blobby shape, maybe not the best result. But just for an example, let's go here, show you what I'm talking about. Let's pull this shape into here. We'll start with something a little bit nicer. And this will actually work too. So if like I want to just maybe have a little bit of fun, let's do a quick split mask points here. I'm going to go into transparency mode. I'm going to do clip, or not, sorry, slice circle. And it's like, okay, I want this thing to be sliced along the back here, and then here through the front, I want this to kind of overhang a little bit, so we can kind of slice this off. And then for this knee, I'm going to need a slice rectangle. Like so. And then for the back, you know what, I guess I can just leave that. That'll be the shape I'm looking for. So basically this shape right here is the shape I want. I'm going to delete hidden. We can go to zero mesh, same, adaptive size down to 0. Now we've got our new shape here. Let's do half. Let's see what that gives me. Yeah, still pretty good. So now I can go in here, QMesh polygroup all, and we'll go ahead and flip. And now we have a much nicer shape. I'm going to do a crease tolerance down, hit dynamic, go out of transparency mode. So now you can see much nicer sub D thing to move around. And then you can decide, you know what, through here I want this to be open, so we'll go ahead and mark these, and then we'll QMesh polygroup all, and then we'll just do another crease tolerance. And then through here, if you want it to be, you know, you can have these, oops, you can QMesh these things out and then see what it'll look like here. And if you ever want to change the shape, you're like, you know what, I like this, but I want to cut a hole right through the side. Just go ahead and delete hidden, and then just do a slice circle. You can cut through both sides here. Now, if you want to be a perfect circle, turn on square center, like so. And now we can just do a delete hidden. We'll do zero mesh same. That'll work. And now, yeah, same thing. QMesh polygroup all. We'll pull this in because we like the thickness on the outside. But if you didn't, you can also just QMesh it out. No big deal. And then we'll flip that to our crease tolerance dynamic. And now I've got nice circle cut through there. And then we can go through here and go, oh, you know what? I forgot I wanted this to be like this. No big deal. That kind of thing. Hope that makes sense. Oh, and it's 11 o'clock. Well, we got some stuff going. We'll continue. We'll continue this thing. We'll get this thing done. We'll get some arms in there. We'll do some hard edge modeling. We'll do some refining, and all that good stuff. So thanks everybody for showing up. You know what? I might keep that shape around. We'll see if that turns into anything. Thanks for everybody showing up. And I will see you guys next week. Keep an eyeball out for the time and place. Should be the same bat time, same bat place. We'll see. But y'all take it easy.